The sound came first. Sharp, metallic, final. Click. Handcuffs snapping shut on wrists that had saved 37 lives in the past month alone. The hospital entrance went silent. Patients in wheelchairs stopped moving. Visitors clutched their phones. A delivery driver stood frozen, his cart of supplies forgotten. Officer Derek Harlow shoved the woman forward, hard, her blue scrubs catching the morning light as she stumbled down the concrete steps. "I have a patient coding in OR3, she said, voice steady despite the steel biting into her skin. "You need to let me go?" Harlow's laugh was ugly. "You don't give me orders." What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Maya Torres had once stitched a soldier's severed artery with her bare hands while mortars rained down around her in Kandahar. This wasn't even close to the worst situation she'd faced. Before we dive in, if you want to see how this unfolds, stick with me until the very end. Drop a like and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The shift had started like any other. Maya Torres arrived at Riverside Memorial Hospital at 5:47 a.m., 13 minutes early as always. She parked her 10-year-old Honda in the employee lot, grabbed her coffee from the passenger seat, and walked through the side entrance that most staff used to avoid the main lobby chaos. Security guard Morton gave her his usual nod. "Morning, Torres." "Morning, Frank." The hallways smelled like disinfectant and something else, that particular scent hospitals have that's equal parts hope and desperation. Maya had stopped noticing it years ago, the same way she'd stopped flinching at the sound of codes being called overhead. She clocked in at 5:58, changed into fresh scrubs in the women's locker room, and headed to the surgical floor. Riverside Memorial wasn't a huge hospital. 212 beds, 3 operating rooms, 1 trauma bay that handled everything from car accidents to construction injuries. It sat on the edge of Clearwater, a mid-sized city in North Carolina that most people only knew because of the military base 40 minutes south. Maya had been working there for 8 months. Before that, she'd spent 6 years at Walter Reed, and before that was a different life entirely. "Torres, you're with me today," Dr. Patricia Reeves said, appearing around the corner with a tablet in hand. Reeves was the head of surgery, a woman in her 50s with silver hair she kept in a tight bun and a reputation for not tolerating mistakes. "We've got a cholecystectomy at 7, possible appendectomy at 9 if radiology confirms, and a hernia repair at noon." "Got it." "You seem distracted." Maya blinked. "I'm fine." Reeves studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Pre-op for the first patient is in 20. Don't be late." Maya wasn't late. She was never late. The cholecystectomy went smoothly. Gallbladder removal, routine, 43 minutes from incision to closing. The appendectomy got bumped because the patient's scans came back inconclusive. The hernia repair was scheduled for a 68-year-old man named Gerald Kincaid, who spent the entire pre-op consultation telling Maya about his granddaughter's softball tournament. "She hit 2 home runs," he said, grinning despite the IV in his arm. "2! Kid's got a hell of a swing." "Sounds like she takes after you," Maya said, adjusting his monitors. "Damn right she does." It was 11:47 a.m. when everything changed. Maya was in the break room, halfway through a protein bar that tasted like cardboard, when her pager went off. Emergency surgical consult, trauma bay. 1. Immediate. She was moving before the message finished loading. The trauma bay was controlled chaos when she arrived. 2 paramedics were transferring a patient from a gurney to the hospital bed, while Dr. Reeves barked orders at a nurse who was struggling to get a blood pressure reading. "What do we have?" Maya asked, stepping into position. "Male, approximately 60 years old, MVA with rollover, blunt force trauma to the chest and abdomen," one of the paramedics said, rattling off vitals. "BP's dropping, heart rate's climbing, we've got suspected internal bleeding." The patient's face was pale, covered in sweat. His breathing came in short, shallow gasps. "We need to get him to OR3 now," Reeves said. "Torres, prep him. I'll scrub in." Maya moved fast. IV lines, oxygen mask, preliminary scans to identify the worst of the damage. The man's abdomen was rigid, classic sign of internal hemorrhaging. Every second counted. "His wallet says Robert Brennan," a nurse said, holding up a leather billfold. "Address in Clearwater? Looks like he's got some kind of federal ID card in here, too." "Don't care about his resume right now," Reeves snapped. "Just keep him stable. They were wheeling him toward the elevator when the first officer appeared. Derek Harlow was a Clearwater PD patrol officer, 6'2", with a build that suggested he spent more time at the gym than behind a desk. He had a face that might have been handsome if it weren't fixed in a permanent scowl. "Hold on," he said, stepping into their path. "Nobody moves this guy until I get a statement." Reeves didn't even slow down. "Get out of the way." "This is a traffic collision investigation. I need information about—" "You need to step aside before this man dies on my floor." Harlow's jaw tightened. "I'm doing my job, ma'am." "So am I. Move." For a moment, Maya thought he might actually comply. Then his radio crackled with some dispatch message, and his expression shifted into something uglier. "I said nobody moves him." Reeves stopped, turned, looked Harlow dead in the eye. "Officer, this patient has internal bleeding. If we don't operate in the next 10 minutes, he will die. Do you understand what I'm telling you?" "I understand you're interfering with police business." "I'm saving a life." "You'll save it after I get what I need." The argument escalated fast, voices rising, tension crackling through the hallway like static electricity. Maya kept her hands on the gurney, ready to move, the second Reeves gave the word. But Harlow wasn't backing down. "I'm going to need everyone to step back," he said, hand dropping to his belt, not quite touching his weapon, but close enough to make the threat clear. That's when Maya made her first mistake. "Sir, with all respect, this man doesn't have time for protocol," she said, keeping her voice calm and professional. "We can answer your questions after surgery, but right now, I didn't ask for your opinion, nurse." "I'm not giving an opinion. I'm stating a medical fact." Harlow's eyes narrowed. "You got a problem with authority?" "I have a problem with watching someone die because of a paperwork delay." The hallway went quiet. Reeves shot Maya a look that clearly said, "Shut up and let me handle this." But it was too late. Harlow had already shifted his attention, and now he was staring at Maya like she'd just challenged him to a fight. "What's your name?" he asked. "Maya Torres. I'm a surgical nurse here." "You always talk back to police officers, Torres?" "Only when lives are at stake." Wrong thing to say. Harlow stepped closer, invading her space in a way that was clearly meant to intimidate. Maya held her ground. She'd faced down insurgents in Helmand Province. A small-town cop with an ego problem didn't even register. "Here's what's going to happen," Harlow said slowly. "You're going to step aside, keep your mouth shut, and let me do my job. If you interfere again, I'll charge you with obstruction. Are we clear?" Maya looked past him at the patient on the gurney. Robert Brennan's breathing had gotten worse. His skin was gray. "We don't have time for this," she said. "That wasn't a question." Reeves intervened then, physically stepping between them. "Officer Harlow, I'm the attending surgeon, and this is my decision. We're taking this patient to surgery now. If you want to file a complaint, you can do it through hospital administration." She turned to the team. "Move." They moved. Harlow shouted something behind them, but they were already at the elevator. The doors closed on his angry face, and for a moment, Maya thought that would be the end of it. She was wrong. The surgery took 3 hours and 42 minutes. Robert Brennan had a ruptured spleen, a lacerated liver, and internal bleeding in 2 places. Reeves worked with the kind of focused intensity that made her one of the best surgeons in the state, and Maya matched her pace without hesitation, anticipating needs, adjusting equipment, monitoring vitals with the precision that came from years of experience in high-pressure environments. By the time they closed, Brennan's vitals had stabilized, not out of the woods yet, but alive. "Good work," Reeves said as they stripped off their gloves. She sounded exhausted. "That was close." "Too close," Maya agreed. "That cop was out of line." "They usually are." Reeves gave her a sharp look. "Don't make this a pattern, Torres. I appreciate the backup, but arguing with police in my hospital creates problems I don't need." "Understood." But Maya could see the doubt in Reeves' eyes. The unspoken question, "Are you going to be a problem?" She'd dealt with that look before. In the Army, when she'd questioned orders that would have gotten soldiers killed. At Walter Reed, when she'd reported a doctor for cutting corners. People didn't like it when you refused to fall in line, even when falling in line meant someone got hurt. Maya changed out of her surgical scrubs, washed her hands 3 times out of habit, and headed for the exit. Her shift didn't officially end for another hour, but Reeves had waved her off with a curt, "Go home, you've earned it." She was halfway across the employee parking lot when the patrol car pulled up. Derek Harlow stepped out, along with another officer Maya didn't recognize. Younger guy, nervous energy, hand resting on his belt like he was expecting trouble. "Maya Torres?" Harlow called. Maya stopped. "Yes?" "We need to have a conversation." "About?" "About you interfering with a police investigation." Here we go, Maya thought. She'd seen this before too. Cops who couldn't let things go. Who took every perceived slight as a personal attack. "I didn't interfere with anything," she said calmly. "I did my job." "Your job is to follow orders." "My job is to save lives." Harlow's expression darkened. "You got a real attitude problem, you know that?" Maya said nothing. Sometimes silence was the better option. "We're going to need you to come down to the station," Harlow continued. "Answer some questions about what happened in that hallway." "Am I being charged with something?" "Not yet." "Then I'm not going anywhere." That's when Harlow made his move. He stepped forward fast, closing the distance between them before Maya could react. His hand shot out, grabbing her arm, hard enough to hurt. "Let go of me," Maya said, voice still steady. "You're coming with us." "On what grounds?" "Obstruction of justice, interfering with police business. Pick one." The second officer looked uncomfortable but didn't intervene. Maya noticed his nameplate, Stevens. "Officer Stevens," she said, making eye contact. "You know this isn't legal." Stevens looked away. Harlow yanked her arm, pulling her toward the patrol car. Maya didn't resist, not yet, but she also didn't make it easy. She let her weight go slack, forcing him to drag her. "Stop resisting," he barked. "I'm not resisting. I'm standing still." "You're making this harder than it needs to be." A few hospital employees had stopped to watch. Someone had their phone out, filming. Good, Maya thought. Let them record this. Harlow shoved her against the patrol car, and that's when muscle memory kicked in. Maya's body responded before her brain could stop it, a defensive move she'd learned in basic training, designed to break a hold without causing injury. She twisted her arm, rotated her shoulder, and suddenly Harlow's grip was gone. But she didn't follow through, didn't strike, didn't run, just stepped back, hands visible, posture non-threatening. Harlow's face went red. "You just assaulted a police officer," he snarled. "I didn't touch you." "I saw you resist." "I removed myself from an illegal restraint." That's when the handcuffs came out. Click. The sound echoed across the parking lot, metal on skin, tight enough to bite. "You're under arrest," Harlow said, spinning her around and pressing her against the car. "You have the right to remain silent." "This is illegal detention," Maya said, voice still calm despite the adrenaline flooding her system. "I haven't committed a crime. Anything you say can and will be used against you. I'm a surgical nurse. I was performing my duties." "You have the right to an attorney. Check my ID badge. There's a number on the back." That made Harlow pause. "What?" "My ID badge. There's an emergency contact number printed on the back. Call it." Harlow grabbed the badge clipped to her scrubs, flipped it over. Sure enough, there was a number. But it wasn't the hospital's main line or some personal contact. It was a Pentagon exchange. Harlow stared at it for a moment, then laughed. "What is this, some kind of joke?" "Call it and find out." "I'm not calling." "Then you're making the biggest mistake of your career." Something in her tone must have gotten through, because Harlow actually hesitated. But then his pride kicked in, and he shook his head. "Nice try. Get in the car." He shoved her toward the open rear door. Maya went, because fighting would only make things worse. But as she ducked into the back seat, she caught Stephen's eye one more time. "Call the number," she said quietly. "Please." Stevens looked at Harlow, then back at Maya. He didn't call. The patrol car pulled away from Riverside Memorial at 3:17 p.m. Maya sat in the back, hands cuffed behind her, and watched the hospital disappear in the side mirror. She could see people still standing in the parking lot, phones up, recording everything. "You want to tell me what that number's about?" Harlow asked from the front seat. Maya didn't answer. "Strong silent type, huh? That's fine. You'll talk eventually." The drive to the police station took 11 minutes. Clearwater PD headquarters was a squat brick building on the east side of town, surrounded by a chain-link fence and a parking lot full of marked cars. They pulled into the garage and Harlow yanked Maya out of the back seat with more force than necessary. "Watch your head," he said mockingly as he guided her toward the entrance. Inside, the station smelled like coffee and old paperwork. A few officers glanced up as they passed, but nobody asked questions. This was clearly routine for them. Harlow led her to a holding area, a small room with a bench bolted to the wall and a door that locked from the outside. Not quite a cell, but close enough. "Sit," he ordered. Maya sat. "I'm going to process your paperwork. When I come back, you're going to explain why you think assaulting a police officer was a good idea." "I didn't assault you." "We'll see what the report says." He left, slamming the door behind him. Maya leaned back against the wall and closed her eyes. This was bad. Not the worst situation she'd been in, not even close, but bad enough. False arrest, illegal detention, potential charges that could tank her nursing license. And for what? Doing her job? She thought about Robert Brennan, lying in recovery at Riverside Memorial. Wondered if he was still stable, if the surgery would hold, if... Her thoughts were interrupted by shouting from somewhere deeper in the station. Muffled at first, then louder. Multiple voices, urgent and sharp, then running footsteps. The door to her holding room flew open, but it wasn't Harlow. It was a woman in a dark suit, FBI credentials already in her hand. Behind her stood two uniformed officers Maya didn't recognize. Not Clearwater PD. Their patches said military police. "Maya Torres?" the FBI agent asked. "Yes? I'm Special Agent Rachel Kincaid. You need to come with me right now." Maya stood slowly, still handcuffed. "What's going on?" "The patient you operated on this afternoon, Robert Brennan. Do you know who he is?" "A car accident victim." "He's the deputy director of the Defense Intelligence Agency." Maya's stomach dropped. Kincaid stepped closer, her expression grim. "And he just coded. They're trying to resuscitate him right now, but the surgical team says they need you. Something about complications from the initial procedure that only you would know how to handle." The room seemed to tilt. "Officer Harlow detained me," Maya said, finding her voice. "I told him to call the number on my badge. He didn't." Kincaid's tone could have cut glass. "And now a federal official is dying because you're sitting in a holding cell instead of doing your job." She pulled out a key and unlocked Maya's handcuffs. They fell away, leaving red marks on her wrists. "We need to go. Now." They moved fast. Out of the holding room, through the station, past a desk sergeant who looked like he'd just seen a ghost. Maya caught a glimpse of Harlow standing in a corner office, face pale, talking to someone in a suit who looked furious. Then they were outside, and a black SUV was waiting with its engine running. "Get in," Kincaid said. Maya climbed into the back seat. The SUV peeled out before her door was fully closed, lights flashing, siren wailing. "How long ago did he code?" Maya asked, already running through protocols in her head. 4 minutes. 4 minutes. Brain damage started after 6. What happened? Internal bleeding resumed. The surgical team tried to reopen, but they hit a complication, something about the liver repair. "The left lobe anastomosis," Maya said immediately. "We had to clamp a branch vessel that was too damaged to repair properly. Dr. Reeves placed a temporary clip, but it needed to be monitored closely. They don't know how to handle it. Because Reeves is in court for a malpractice deposition. She won't be back until tonight." Kincaid's expression darkened. "So you're the only one who knows the exact setup?" "Yes." The SUV wove through traffic, running red lights, forcing other cars out of the way. Maya braced herself against the door handle, mind racing through every detail of Brennan's surgery. If the clip had shifted, the vessel would have ruptured. That would cause hemorrhaging into the abdominal cavity. Fast, catastrophic, and nearly impossible to control without knowing exactly where to look. "How far out are we?" Maya asked. 3 minutes. Too long. She pulled out her phone, realized Harlow had taken it when he arrested her. "I need to call ahead, tell them what to do until I get there." Kincaid handed over her own phone without hesitation. "Speed dial 2. That's the hospital's direct line to OR3. Maya dialed. It rang twice before someone picked up. "This is Dr. Marcus Webb. Who is this?" "Dr. Webb, it's Maya Torres. I'm en route, but I need you to listen carefully. Robert Brennan's bleed is coming from the left hepatic branch vessel. We placed a temporary clip at the bifurcation point during the initial surgery. I see it. Christ, it's barely holding. Don't touch it yet. Pack the area with lap sponges to control the blood. Get 2 units of O negative ready for immediate transfusion and prep a suture kit with 5-0-proline. I'll be there in 2 minutes. Torres, I can't just wait. If you remove that clip without the proper setup, he'll bleed out before you can clamp the proximal vessel. Trust me. A pause. Then, okay. 2 minutes. Maya hung up and handed the phone back to Kincaid. You sure you can fix this? Kincaid asked. Maya met her eyes. I've done worse under mortar fire. The SUV screeched into Riverside Memorial's emergency entrance exactly 90 seconds later. Maya was out before it fully stopped, sprinting through the doors in her street clothes, still wearing the sneakers she'd put on that morning. Staff scattered as she ran past, heading straight for the surgical wing. She hit the OR floor at a dead run, grabbed a surgical cap and mask from the supply station without breaking stride, and shouldered through the OR 3 doors. Dr. Webb looked up from the table, sweat dripping down his face. Torres, thank God! Maya didn't waste time with pleasantries. She scrubbed fast, 30 seconds instead of the usual 3 minutes, but there was no choice, pulled on gloves, and stepped to the table. Robert Brennan's abdomen was open, packed with blood-soaked sponges. The monitor showed his heart rate climbing, blood pressure dropping. He was maybe 2 minutes from full cardiac arrest. Suction, Maya ordered. A nurse handed her the instrument. Maya cleared the blood, found the clip, saw exactly what she'd feared. It had shifted when they tried to reposition him, and now the vessel was partially torn. Proline suture, curved needle. Webb handed it over. His hands were shaking slightly. Maya's weren't. She worked fast, fingers moving with the kind of precision that came from years of practice. 1 suture, 2, 3. Reinforcing the vessel wall, securing the clip, redirecting blood flow through alternate pathways. The bleeding slowed, then stopped. BP stabilizing, the anesthesiologist called out. Heart rate coming down. Maya stepped back, letting Webb take over the closing procedure. Her hands were covered in blood, Brennan's blood, and her heart was pounding, but her face remained calm. He's gonna make it, Webb said, sounding stunned. Maya pulled off her gloves and dropped them in the disposal bin. Keep him monitored. That vessel's fragile. Any change in pressure could restart the bleeding. I will. Webb looked at her. Where did you learn to... Another time, Maya said. She left the OR, stripped off the temporary surgical gear, and found Agent Kincaid waiting in the hallway. He's stable? Kincaid asked. For now, Kincaid nodded slowly. Then she pulled out her phone and made a call. This is Kincaid. Torres successfully stabilized Brennan. Yes, she got here in time. A pause. Understood. I'll inform her. She hung up and turned to Maya. You need to come with me. Where? The station. There's about to be a very different kind of conversation with Officer Harlow. The drive back to Clearwater PD felt different this time. Maya sat in the passenger seat of Kincaid's SUV. No handcuffs, no threats, just the quiet hum of the engine and the agent's occasional glances in her direction. Through the windshield, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the streets, turning ordinary buildings into sharp-edged silhouettes. You handled that well, Kincaid said finally, breaking the silence. Maya didn't respond immediately. She was watching her hands, still steady, despite everything. Old training never really left you. I've had practice. I read your file on the way to get you. Kincaid's tone was neutral, professional. Army medic, 6 tours, 3 commendations for valor, Purple Heart, after that incident in Kandahar where you... I know what's in my file, Kincaid nodded, letting it drop. They drove in silence for another minute before she spoke again. What Harlow did today was beyond protocol violation. You understand that, right? I understand he let his ego override common sense. It's more than that. He detained medical personnel during an active emergency involving a federal official. There are people in Washington who are very interested in having a conversation about that. Maya turned to look at her. What kind of conversation? The kind that ends careers. Kincaid's expression didn't change, but there was steel underneath. Robert Brennan isn't just some bureaucrat. He's DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency. The work he does is classified at levels most people don't even know exist. When he went into surgery this afternoon, 12 different agencies got automatic notifications. When he coded, those same agencies mobilized response teams. And when Harlow refused to let me go, every second of delay got documented, time-stamped, recorded. Kincaid took a turn onto Main Street, heading toward the station. Right now, there are federal investigators pulling body cam footage, interviewing witnesses, and building a case that's going to bury Officer Derek Harlow so deep he'll never see daylight again. Maya felt something twist in her chest. Not quite satisfaction, not quite guilt, just a cold awareness that she'd been in the middle of something much bigger than a simple arrest. "I just wanted to do my job," she said quietly. "I know, but sometimes doing your job puts you at the center of things you didn't ask for." Kincaid pulled into the police station parking lot, past the regular visitor spaces, straight to a reserved section near the front entrance. Welcome to one of those times. The station looked different from this angle. Less intimidating, more bureaucratic, just another government building where people pushed papers and tried to meet quotas. But Maya could feel the tension before they even walked through the doors. The lobby was fuller than it had been earlier. More officers, more suits, more people talking in tight clusters, with expressions that ranged from confused to furious. A few heads turned when Maya and Kincaid entered, and the conversations dropped to whispers. "Agent Kincaid," the desk sergeant said, standing up quickly. His nameplate read Morrison, and he looked like he'd aged 5 years in the past hour. "They're waiting for you in conference room B." "Who's they?" "Chief Dalton, Captain Foster, 2 more FBI agents, someone from the DA's office, and—" Morrison hesitated. "Some military personnel who won't identify their unit." Kincaid's eyebrow raised slightly. "Interesting. Where's Harlow?" "Interrogation room 2. He's been in there for 20 minutes with his union rep." "Good. Keep him there." Kincaid turned to Maya. "Stay close to me. Don't answer any questions unless I clear it first." They walked down a hallway that seemed longer than it actually was, past offices with closed doors and muted voices. Maya could feel eyes following them, officers pretending not to stare, administrative staff suddenly very interested in their computer screens. Conference room B was at the end of the hall, door closed, blinds drawn. Kincaid knocked once and entered without waiting for a response. The room went silent. 6 people sat around a large table covered in files, laptops, and coffee cups. Maya recognized the setup immediately. This was a task force briefing, the kind of coordinated response that happened when something went very wrong and multiple agencies needed to figure out who was responsible. "Agent Kincaid," said a man in his 50s with silver hair and a police chief's uniform. His face was carved from granite and his eyes were cold. "This is Ms. Torres?" "Maya Torres, yes." Kincaid gestured to an empty chair. "She just came from Riverside Memorial. Robert Brennan is stable." A woman in an FBI jacket, younger than Kincaid, sharper edges, leaned forward. "How stable?" "He'll live," Maya said, finding her voice. "The repair is holding. Barring complications, he should make a full recovery." The woman nodded and made a note on her tablet. "I'm Special Agent Lisa Crane, FBI Critical Incident Response. I need to ask you some questions about the timeline today." "Before we start," interrupted another voice from the far end of the table, "I'd like to establish something." Maya turned to look at the speaker and felt her pulse quicken. He was military. That much was obvious from the way he sat, the way he held himself, the way his eyes assessed everyone in the room with the kind of calculation that came from years of tactical planning. He wore civilian clothes, but the bearing was unmistakable. Late 40s, dark hair going gray at the temples. A scar running along his jawline that spoke of violence survived. "Colonel Marcus Vance," he said, though he didn't offer a hand or stand up. "Defense Intelligence Agency. Ms. Torres, what security clearance do you currently hold?" The question caught everyone off guard. Even Kincaid blinked. "Secret," Maya said. "Maintained from my military service. Updated annually through my work at Walter Reed." Vance's expression didn't change. "And you're aware that Robert Brennan's identity and position are classified?" "I am now." "Did you discuss his case with anyone at the hospital beyond the immediate surgical team?" "No." "Did you disclose his identity or position to Officer Harlow during your detention?" "I didn't know his identity or position during my detention." Vance studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Understood. Just needed to establish the record. He looked at Chief Dalton. Continue. Dalton's jaw tightened, clearly not used to being given permission in his own station, but he swallowed whatever response he wanted to give. Ms. Torres, I want to start by apologizing for what happened today. Officer Harlow's actions were— Chief, Crane interrupted, save the apologies for after we establish the facts. Dalton's face went red, but he shut up. Crane pulled out a tablet and swiped through several screens. Let's go through this chronologically. You arrived at Riverside Memorial at 5:47 a.m., clocked in at 5:58. First surgery began at 7:12. Is that correct? Maya nodded. Yes. Robert Brennan arrived at the trauma bay at 11:47. You were called in for surgical consult. Walk me through what happened next. Maya did. She kept it clinical, factual, leaving out opinions and focusing on observable events. The surgery, the confrontation with Harlow in the hallway, the argument, the decision to proceed despite his objections. Crane listened without interrupting, making occasional notes. When Maya finished, she looked up. And when did Officer Harlow first make physical contact with you? In the parking lot, approximately 3:10 p.m. Describe the contact. He grabbed my arm. I told him to let go. He refused and stated I was under arrest for obstruction of justice. Did you resist? I performed a standard defensive release. No strikes. No force beyond breaking his grip. But you did physically respond to his attempt to restrain you. Maya met Crane's eyes. I removed myself from an illegal hold. That's not resistance. That's self-defense. Someone at the table, a man in a suit who hadn't been introduced, made a note and circled something on his paper. Who are you? Maya asked directly. The man looked up, surprised. Assistant District Attorney Jerome Walsh. I'm here to assess potential charges. Against who? That remains to be determined. Kincaid leaned forward. Let's be clear, Counselor. If you're considering charges against Ms. Torres, you should know that we have multiple witnesses, video footage, and a federal investigation that all support her version of events. Walsh's expression didn't change. I'm aware. I'm also aware that assaulting a police officer is a serious crime, regardless of circumstances. She didn't assault anyone. Officer Harlow says otherwise. The room's temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Maya felt that old familiar feeling rising in her chest, the same one she'd felt in Afghanistan when officers made decisions that got good soldiers killed, the same one she'd felt at Walter Reed when bureaucrats prioritized paperwork over patients. It was anger, but cold and controlled, the kind that didn't explode but instead burned slow and steady. Where's the body cam footage? She asked. Everyone turned to look at her. Officer Harlow was wearing a camera, Maya continued. So was Officer Stevens. The footage will show exactly what happened. Dalton shifted uncomfortably. We're in the process of reviewing— You mean you haven't watched it yet? Crane's voice cut like a knife. A federal official nearly died because one of your officers detained medical personnel, and you haven't reviewed the footage? We're following protocol. Protocol? Colonel Vance stood up, and suddenly the room felt smaller. Chief Dalton, let me explain something to you about protocol. When a DIA deputy director is involved in any incident, protocol demands immediate review of all evidence. That includes body cam footage, dispatch records, and witness statements. The fact that you're in the process of reviewing footage 3 hours after the incident tells me you're either incompetent or you're stalling. Dalton's face went purple. Colonel, with all respect, this is my station. Your station is now part of a federal investigation, which means what I say goes. Vance turned to one of the other people at the table, a younger man in slacks and a button-down shirt. Get the footage, now. The man jumped up and left the room without a word. Crane looked at Vance with something that might have been respect. Thank you, Colonel. Don't thank me yet. We still need to establish what happened in that holding room. He turned to Maya. You told Officer Harlow to call a number on your badge. What number? Pentagon Emergency Contact. It's registered to a liaison office that handles clearance verification for former military personnel in sensitive positions. And Harlow didn't call it. No. Did he give a reason? Maya thought back to the parking lot, to Harlow's mocking laugh. He said it was a joke. Vance's expression darkened. He thought a Pentagon contact number was a joke. Apparently. Someone's phone buzzed. Crane glanced at it, then stood up. Brennan's wife just arrived at the hospital. She's asking questions. What does she know? Vance asked. That her husband was in a car accident and nearly died in surgery. Nothing about the DIA connection, nothing about the detention. Keep it that way for now. Last thing we need is his family finding out that local PD nearly killed him through sheer stupidity. Vance sat back down, rubbing his temples like he had a headache. What's the timeline on Harlow's interview? Dalton looked at his watch. His union rep requested 30 minutes to prep. That was 25 minutes ago. So he's ready. Technically, yes, but then let's talk to him. The younger man returned carrying a laptop. He set it on the table and opened it, fingers flying across the keyboard. I've got Harlow's body cam footage queued up. Starts at 2:47 p.m. when he first arrived at the hospital. Play it, Vance ordered. The screen flickered, then showed a dashboard view from inside a patrol car. Harlow's voice came through, talking to dispatch about responding to a traffic accident. The car pulled into the hospital's emergency entrance, and Harlow got out. The footage showed him walking through the halls, past nurses and patients, until he reached the trauma bay where Maya and Dr. Reeves were prepping Robert Brennan for surgery. Everyone in the conference room leaned forward, watching. The confrontation played out exactly as Maya remembered. Harlow demanding information, Reeves telling him to move, Maya pointing out that time was critical. The escalation was clear, Harlow's voice getting louder, his body language becoming more aggressive, his hand dropping to his belt in what any reasonable person would interpret as a threat. Then the decision to move Brennan to surgery anyway, and Harlow's face filling the camera as he shouted after them. Pause it there, Crane said. The image froze on Harlow's expression, angry, humiliated, furious. That's a man who just got challenged in public, Walsh observed, and didn't like it. That's a man who prioritized his ego over a patient's life, Kincaid corrected. The footage resumed. It skipped ahead. Body cams didn't record continuously, only when activated, and picked up again in the parking lot. Maya watched herself walk toward her car, watched Harlow pull up, get out, approach her. The audio was clear enough to hear every word. Maya Torres, we need to have a conversation. About? About you interfering with a police investigation. The exchange was professional at first, almost civil, but then Maya refused to go to the station voluntarily, and everything changed. Harlow's hand shot out, grabbing her arm. The camera angle shifted as he moved, but you could see Maya's face, calm, controlled, no panic. Let go of me. You're coming with us. On what grounds? Obstruction of justice. Interfering with police business. Pick one. Then the defensive release. Maya's movement was so fast the camera barely caught it. A twist, a rotation, and suddenly Harlow's hand was empty. But Maya didn't follow through, didn't strike, didn't run, just stepped back with her hands visible. The room watched in complete silence as Harlow's face went red on screen, as he pulled out handcuffs, as he spun Maya around and slammed her against the patrol car. You just assaulted a police officer. I didn't touch you. I saw you resist. The arrest continued, Maya's voice staying calm even as Harlow manhandled her into the back seat. The camera caught her last words before the door closed. Check my ID badge. There's a number on the back. Call it. Then Harlow, looking at the badge, reading the number, laughing. What is this, some kind of joke? The footage ended. Nobody spoke for a long moment. Finally, Walsh broke the silence. That's not resistance. That's a textbook defensive maneuver, and she didn't follow through with any offensive action. Agreed, Crane said. And Harlow had no legal grounds for the arrest in the first place. Dalton looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. I'll need to review our use of force policies. Your policies don't matter, Vance interrupted. What matters is that one of your officers detained critical medical personnel during a federal emergency, ignored multiple warnings, refused to verify credentials, and as a direct result, nearly caused the death of a DIA deputy director. He stood up, buttoning his jacket. Chief Dalton, I'm formally requesting that Officer Derek Harlow be suspended pending federal investigation. Colonel, I don't think... I'm not asking. That's a directive from the Defense Intelligence Agency, backed by the FBI. Vance looked at Crane. Correct? Correct, Crane confirmed. We're opening a full investigation under federal obstruction statutes. Officer Harlow is a material witness at minimum, a potential defendant at maximum. Dalton's face had gone from purple to pale. I'll need to consult with our legal department. Consult all you want. But Harlow doesn't work another shift until this is resolved. The door opened and another officer stuck his head in. Chief, Harlow's getting restless. His rep is demanding to know what's taking so long. Vance smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Let's not keep them waiting. They moved to interrogation room 2 in a formation that felt almost military. Vance leading, Crane and Kincaid flanking. Maya following behind with Dalton bringing up the rear. Walsh peeled off to observe from the monitoring room. The interrogation room was exactly what Maya expected. Small gray walls, a metal table bolted to the floor, uncomfortable chairs designed to make people want to talk just to leave faster. Derek Harlow sat on one side, his union representative beside him. The rep was a thin man in his 60s with wire-rimmed glasses and a briefcase that had seen better days. He looked up when the door opened, ready to launch into whatever prepared statement he'd been working on. Then he saw the number of people entering, the FBI jackets, the military bearing of Colonel Vance, and his expression changed. "What is this?" he asked. "This is a federal investigation," Crane said, taking a seat across from Harlow. "I'm Special Agent Crane, FBI. This is Colonel Vance, DIA. You've already met Agent Kincaid." Harlow's eyes found Maya standing near the door, and his face twisted. "Why is she here?" "Ms. Torres is a witness and potential victim in this investigation," Crane said. "She has every right to observe." "Victim? I arrested her for what exactly?" Vance's voice cut through the room like a blade. "Obstruction, assault? Let's review what actually happened, Officer Harlow." The union rep put a hand on Harlow's arm. "My client doesn't have to answer questions without—" "Your client is going to answer questions whether he wants to or not," Vance interrupted. "The only question is whether he does it here, cooperatively, or in federal custody after we arrest him for obstruction of a federal investigation." The Reepe's mouth opened, then closed. Crane pulled out a tablet and brought up the body cam footage. "Officer Harlow, at 3:14 p.m. today, you detained Maya Torres in the parking lot of Riverside Memorial Hospital. Is that correct?" Harlow glanced at his rep, who nodded reluctantly. "Yes." "And you were aware that Ms. Torres was a surgical nurse at that hospital?" "Yes." "Were you aware that approximately 3 hours earlier you had prevented that same nurse from immediately transporting a critical patient to surgery?" "I was conducting an investigation. Were you aware," Vance interrupted, his voice dropping to something dangerous, "that the patient in question was Robert Brennan, Deputy Director of the Defense Intelligence Agency?" The room went silent. Harlow stared. "What?" "Robert Brennan, DIA. Classified clearance level that requires immediate notification of 12 federal agencies in case of medical emergency." Vance leaned forward. "Ring any bells?" He was just a car accident victim. He was a federal official, and you delayed his medical treatment." The color drained from Harlow's face. Maya watched him process the information, saw the exact moment he realized how badly he'd screwed up. "I didn't know," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "You didn't know because you didn't check," Crane said. "Ms. Torres specifically told you to call the number on her badge. Why didn't you?" "I thought it seemed like a joke," Kincaid supplied. "That's what you said in the parking lot. You thought a Pentagon contact number was a joke." Harlow's hands were shaking now. "I made a judgment call." "You made a catastrophic error," Vance corrected. "And because of that error, Robert Brennan went into cardiac arrest at 3:54 p.m. He was clinically dead for 47 seconds before the hospital team got his heart started again. Do you understand what I'm telling you?" Harlow looked at his union rep, desperate for help. The rep looked back with an expression that said, "You're on your own." "I was just doing my job," Harlow tried. "Your job," Maya said quietly from the doorway, speaking for the first time since they'd entered the room, "was to protect and serve, not to let someone die because you were too proud to make a phone call." Harlow turned to glare at her, and for a moment, Maya saw that same ugly anger from the parking lot. But now it was mixed with fear. "You resisted arrest," he said, grasping at straws. "I performed a defensive release after you grabbed me without legal cause," Maya replied, voice steady. "The body cam footage shows I didn't strike you," didn't threaten you, didn't do anything except remove your hand from my arm. You... She's right, Crane said, pulling up the footage on her tablet and turning it so Harlow could see. Watch. They played it again. Maya's quick movement, Harlow's empty hand, her immediate step back with hands visible. That's not assault, Crane continued. That's self-defense. And given that you had no legal grounds for the arrest in the first place, she would have been justified in doing a lot more. Harlow slumped in his chair. His union rep cleared his throat. If there's going to be formal charges, my client will need... There are going to be charges, Vance said flatly. The only question is how many. Obstruction of federal duties, unlawful detention, false arrest, reckless endangerment. Take your pick. Those are federal charges, the rep protested. This is a local matter. It stopped being local the moment Robert Brennan flatlined. Vance stood up. Officer Harlow, you are suspended effective immediately. You'll surrender your badge and weapon to Chief Dalton, and you will not leave Clearwater without notifying the FBI. Do you understand? Harlow didn't answer, just stared at the table. Do you understand? Vance repeated, harder. Yes, Harlow whispered. Good. Vance turned to Dalton. Chief, I'll need copies of all relevant reports, personnel files, and training records by end of business tomorrow. Dalton nodded, looking shell-shocked. The group filed out of the interrogation room, leaving Harlow and his rep alone with the weight of what had just happened. In the hallway, Crane pulled Kincaid aside for a whispered conversation while Vance checked his phone. Maya stood there, feeling oddly disconnected from everything. She'd been arrested, vindicated, and turned into a key witness in a federal investigation, all in the span of 6 hours. Ms. Torres, Vance said, looking up from his phone, I need you to understand something. This investigation is going to get complicated. There will be interviews, depositions, possibly testimony. Are you prepared for that? I'll do whatever's necessary. Good. He studied her for a moment. I read your service record while en route to Clearwater, Kandahar, the field hospital incident, the Bronze Star. You've been in worse situations than this. It wasn't a question, but Maya answered anyway. Yes, sir. Then you know how this works. The system grinds slow, but it grinds thorough. He paused. Harlow's career is over. The question is, how many others go down with him? Maya glanced back at the interrogation room door. He made his choices. He did, but so did everyone else who enabled him. The training officers who taught him that authority matters more than judgment. The supervisors who overlooked previous complaints. The culture that rewards aggression over de-escalation. Vance's expression was grim. This is bigger than one bad cop, Ms. Torres. This is about a system that allows bad cops to exist. Before Maya could respond, Crane's phone rang. She answered it, listened for a moment, then her face went pale. When? She asked sharply. How many? A pause. We're on our way. She hung up and looked at Vance. We have a problem. What kind of problem? The kind that just arrived at Riverside Memorial in 3 vehicles demanding to see Robert Brennan. Sobbed. Crane was already moving toward the exit. Hospital security says they're armed, credentialed, and refusing to identify which agency they're with. Vance cursed under his breath. DIA doesn't have a protection detail deployed to Clearwater. Then who are they? Nobody had an answer. They moved fast, out of the station, into waiting vehicles, racing back toward the hospital with lights and sirens clearing the way. Maya ended up in Kincaid's SUV again, this time with Crane riding shotgun and both agents on their phones coordinating with hospital security. I need eyes on those vehicles, Crane was saying. Registration, make, model, anything you can get. And do not let them near Brennan's room until we arrive. Through the windshield, Maya could see the hospital coming into view. The parking lot was more crowded than usual, and there, near the emergency entrance, 3 black SUVs with government plates. Men in dark suits stood around them, hands near their jackets in that universal stance of armed security. But something was off about them. Their positioning was wrong, too aggressive, too obvious. Those aren't federal agents, Maya said. Kincaid glanced at her. How do you know? Because federal agents don't advertise. Those men want to be seen. Crane swore and made another call. This is FBI Special Agent Crane. I'm declaring a Code 3 security incident at Riverside Memorial Hospital. All units respond. They screeched into the parking lot, and Maya was out of the vehicle before it fully stopped. The men in suits turned toward them, hands moving inside their jackets. "Federal agents!" Crane shouted, badge held high. "Identify yourselves!" For a moment, nobody moved. Then one of the men stepped forward, and Maya's blood ran cold when she saw his face. Because she recognized him. Not from Clearwater, not from the hospital, but from 6 years ago in Afghanistan. From the last operation she'd run before leaving the military. From the classified mission that still gave her nightmares. His name was Victor Reese, and he shouldn't have been anywhere near this hospital. Victor Reese looked exactly the same as he had in Kandahar. Sharp features, eyes that assessed threats before processing faces, a scar along his left cheekbone that disappeared into his hairline. He wore an expensive suit now instead of combat fatigues, but the predatory stillness was identical. His gaze swept across the parking lot, cataloging Crane and Kincaid with professional detachment before landing on Maya. Recognition flickered across his face. "Torres," he said, and his voice carried that same flat effect she remembered from tactical briefings in forward operating bases. "Didn't expect to see you here." Crane's hand stayed near her weapon. "I asked you to identify yourself." Reese pulled out credentials without breaking eye contact with Maya. "Victor Reese, private security contractor. We're here on behalf of Mr. Brennan's family to ensure his protection during recovery." "Private security." Crane examined their credentials, then handed them to Kincaid. "Who authorized your presence?" "Mrs. Brennan requested additional security given the nature of her husband's work." "Mrs. Brennan is at the hospital right now and made no such request," Kincaid said. "I just spoke with her 20 minutes ago." Something shifted in Reese's expression, barely perceptible, but Maya caught it. The micro-adjustment of someone whose cover story had just developed a crack. "Then there's been a miscommunication," Reese said smoothly. "We received authorization through her attorney." "Name of the attorney?" "That's privileged information." Colonel Vance stepped forward, and his presence changed the dynamic instantly. Military recognized military, even across the civilian divide. "Mr. Reese, I'm Colonel Marcus Vance, DIA. Robert Brennan is under federal protection, which means your services aren't required. You and your team need to leave. With respect, Colonel, my contract supersedes—" "Your contract doesn't supersede federal authority." Vance's tone could have cut steel. "This is your only warning. Leave voluntarily or leave in custody." The men behind Reese shifted, and Maya saw what Crane and Kincaid probably missed. The way their hands moved inside their jackets wasn't reaching for badges. These weren't security contractors. They were operators. "Maya," Reese said, still looking at her, "tell them we're on the same side here." Every eye turned to her. "I don't know what side you're on," Maya said carefully, "but I know you shouldn't be here." Reese's jaw tightened. "We need to talk, privately." "Not happening," Crane interjected. "You're leaving or you're being arrested. Choose." For 3 seconds that felt like 30, nobody moved. The parking lot held its breath. Federal agents with hands on weapons, contractors with concealed firearms, hospital staff watching from windows. Then Reese smiled, and it was the same smile Maya remembered from Afghanistan. The one that meant he'd already calculated 6 ways to kill everyone in the room and was deciding which was most efficient. "We'll go," he said. "But Torres, when you're ready to hear the truth about Brennan, you know how to find me." He turned and walked back to the lead SUV, his team falling in around him with military precision. Engines started and the 3 vehicles pulled out of the parking lot in formation, disappearing into evening traffic. Crane exhaled slowly. "What the hell was that?" "That," Maya said, "was a problem." Vance was already on his phone, barking orders. "I need full background checks on Victor Reese and everyone in those vehicles. Registration on all 3 SUVs, traffic cam footage, everything. And I want to know who the hell hired them." Kincaid turned to Maya. "You know him." It wasn't a question. "From Afghanistan," Maya confirmed. "He was attached to a classified operation I supported in 2019, Special Activities Division, CYA. "Was he credentialed?" "At the time, yes, but SAD doesn't do private security work. If Reese is contracting now, it's not legitimate protection." Crane holstered her weapon. "Then what is it?" Maya looked at the hospital entrance, where Robert Brennan lay recovering, and felt pieces clicking together in ways she didn't like. "I don't know yet, but we need to move him." Move a patient in critical condition? Vance shook his head. That's a medical decision. It's a tactical decision. Reese showing up here means someone knows Brennan's location, knows his condition, and wants access. The question is whether they want to protect him or silence him. Vance's expression darkened. You think this is an assassination attempt? I think we can't afford to assume it isn't. They moved inside fast, Crane coordinating with hospital security while Kincaid called for additional federal backup. Vance stayed on his phone, pulling strings that reached all the way to Washington. Maya followed them through the emergency entrance, past the same nurses who'd watched her get arrested 6 hours earlier. Their expressions had changed. Now they looked at her with something between respect and curiosity, whispers trailing in her wake. The ICU was on the 4th floor, accessible only through secure elevators that required badge access. A uniformed Clearwater PD officer stood guard outside. Not Harlow, thankfully, but a younger cop who straightened when he saw the FBI jackets. Officer Michaels, Crane said, reading his nameplate. Anyone try to access this floor in the past hour? Just medical staff with proper credentials, ma'am. Dr. Webb checked on the patient 20 minutes ago, and there's a nurse inside now monitoring vitals. Which nurse? Michaels consulted his logbook. Sarah Kimmins. She's been here since 4 o'clock. Something cold settled in Maya's stomach. Sarah Kimmins doesn't work ICU. She's pediatrics. Everyone froze. Then they were moving, Crane and Kincaid drawing weapons, Vance right behind them. Maya didn't have a gun, but her hands went to her sides anyway. Muscle memory from combat zones where threat response was automatic. The ICU door opened onto a quiet hallway lined with patient rooms, each one visible through large glass windows. Medical equipment beeped and hummed. The lights were dimmed for evening hours. Robert Brennan's room was third on the left. Through the window, Maya could see a woman in scrubs standing beside his bed, adjusting his IV line. From this angle, she looked normal. Standard nursing duties, nothing suspicious. But Brennan's monitors were showing elevated heart rate. Crane moved to the door, Kincaid flanking. Vance gestured for Maya to stay back. The door opened silently. Ma'am? Crane said, voice professional but firm. I need you to step away from the patient. The woman turned and Maya got her first clear look at her face. Mid-30s, brown hair pulled back in a ponytail, unremarkable features except for her eyes, cold, focused, calculating. Not a nurse. Her hand was still on the IV line. I'm just adjusting his medication, she said, and her voice had a faint accent. Eastern European, maybe Russian. Step away from the patient now, Crane repeated, weapon coming up. De hours Crane emotes. The woman's hand moved, not away from the IV, but toward a syringe on the medication cart. Everything happened fast. Kincaid lunged forward, closing the distance. The woman grabbed the syringe and swung it toward Brennan's IV port. Kincaid caught her wrist mid-motion, slamming it against the bed rail. The syringe fell, clear liquid spilling across the floor. The woman twisted faster than expected, and suddenly she had a scalpel from somewhere. Sleeve, pocket, Maya couldn't tell, and it was arcing toward Kincaid's throat. Maya moved without thinking, crossing the room in 3 strides and catching the woman's wrist before the blade connected. The woman's eyes widened in surprise. She'd dismissed Maya as a civilian, unarmed, untrained. Mistake. Maya used the woman's momentum against her, redirecting the scalpel away from Kincaid and driving the woman backward into the wall. The scalpel clattered to the floor. The woman tried to counter with an elbow strike, but Maya had already shifted position, controlling both arms now, applying pressure to the shoulder joint. The woman dropped to her knees with a gasp of pain. Crane had her weapon trained on the woman's head. Don't move. Kincaid retrieved the fallen syringe carefully, using a glove. We need this analyzed immediately. Vance was already calling it in. I need a hazmat team and a toxicology lab standing by. Possible poisoning attempt on a federal official. Hospital security arrived, followed by Clearwater PD backup that actually looked competent this time. They secured the woman, hands zip-tied behind her back, searched for additional weapons, read her Miranda rights even though she wasn't saying anything. Maya checked Brennan's monitors. Heart rate still elevated but stabilizing. No signs of additional medication in his system. She didn't get it in, Maya said. We stopped her in time. Dr. Webb burst through the door, white-faced. What happened? I heard there was... He stopped, seeing the woman in restraints, the FBI agents, the dropped syringe. Oh my God. Your patient is fine, Vance said. But we need a full medical workup. Blood draws, toxicology screen, everything. Webb nodded, already moving to Brennan's bedside and beginning examinations. Crane hauled the woman to her feet. Who sent you? The woman smiled, didn't say a word, just smiled. We'll find out eventually, Kincaid said. Take her to federal holding. As they let her out, the woman's eyes found Maya one more time. That same cold calculation, like she was memorizing every detail for a future encounter. Then she was gone, and the room exhaled. Torres, Vance said quietly, where did you learn to move like that? Krav Maga training, required for medical personnel in combat zones. You never know when you'll need to defend yourself or a patient. That was more than self-defense. That was operator-level response time. Maya didn't answer. Some things from her military service weren't in the official files. Kincaid was examining the syringe under the room's overhead light. This isn't standard medication. Look at the viscosity. Maya leaned in. The liquid was slightly thicker than saline with a faint yellowish tint. Could be anything from a paralytic to a neurotoxin. Or something designed to mimic a natural medical complication, Vance added grimly. Make it look like Brennan died from surgical complications instead of assassination. Crane's phone rang. She answered, listened, and her expression went from concern to furious. Say that again. A pause. When? How many? She hung up and looked at Vance. We have multiple problems. First, the syringe analysis is going to take hours. Second, those SUVs we let leave, they didn't leave. They're parked 2 blocks away, engine running. Waiting for something, Kincaid said. For confirmation that their inside person succeeded, Maya realized. When she doesn't report back, they'll know we stopped her. Vance swore. We need to move Brennan now. Can he be transported? Dr. Webb looked up from his examination. Medically? It's risky, but possible. We'd need an ambulance with full ICU support, paramedics trained in post-surgical care, and a destination facility that can handle his condition. Where's the nearest federal medical facility? Crane asked. Fort Bragg has a hospital, Vance said. 43 minutes by ambulance, less if we get helicopter transport. Too exposed. Helicopters make noise, draw attention. If there's a team waiting, they'll hear it coming. Maya's mind was racing through tactical scenarios. What about a decoy? Everyone looked at her. We use the ambulance as a decoy, she explained. Put a security detail in it, make it look like we're moving Brennan. Meanwhile, we transport him in a civilian vehicle, something that doesn't scream federal protection. That's risky, Webb said. If something goes wrong during transport, something's already wrong. We just stopped an assassination attempt in your ICU. The question isn't whether to move him, it's how to do it safely. Vance considered it, then nodded. I like it. Kincaid, coordinate the decoy ambulance. Make it obvious. Lights, sirens, the full show. Crane, I need a civilian vehicle with blacked-out windows, emergency medical equipment hidden inside. I can get that in 20 minutes. Do it. Torres, you're riding with Brennan. You're the only one here who knows his surgical complications well enough to handle an emergency. Maya felt her pulse quicken. Colonel, I'm not a paramedic. If he codes during transport, you stabilized him once today already. You can do it again. Vance's expression was steel. I need someone I can trust. And right now, you're the only person in this building who's proven they'll prioritize his life over everything else. It wasn't a request. Understood, Maya said. The next 20 minutes were controlled chaos. Webb prepared Brennan for transport, adjusting medications, and checking every line and tube. Maya helped, falling into the familiar rhythm of emergency preparation. The portable monitors were smaller than the ICU equipment, but fully functional. Oxygen tank, backup medications, defibrillator, everything they'd need for a mobile ICU. Kincaid organized the decoy ambulance, loading it with security personnel dressed in paramedic uniforms. The plan was simple: leave with full lights and sirens, take a route toward Fort Bragg, and see if anyone followed. Crane returned with a black Ford Explorer with medical-grade tinting and a custom suspension that could handle high-speed driving. The back seats had been removed and replaced with a secured gurney mount. Best I could do on short notice, she said. It's registered to an FBI motor pool, but there's nothing on the outside that identifies it. It'll work, Vance said. They moved Brennan at 7:43 p.m., exactly 90 minutes after the assassination attempt. The decoy ambulance left first, sirens screaming, lights flashing. It pulled out of the hospital's main entrance and headed east toward the highway. 5 minutes later, Maya and Crane wheeled Brennan through a service exit on the hospital's west side. The Explorer was waiting, engine running, Vance in the passenger seat. They loaded Brennan carefully, securing the gurney with straps designed for exactly this purpose. Maya climbed in beside him, checking his vitals one more time. Heart rate stable, blood pressure acceptable, breathing steady. Ready? Crane asked from the driver's seat. Go, Maya said. They pulled out slowly, just another vehicle leaving the hospital. No lights, no sirens, nothing to attract attention. The route Crane took was deliberately circuitous, residential streets instead of main roads, turning randomly to check for tails. Maya watched through the tinted windows, looking for the SUVs, for Reese, for anything that suggested they'd been made. Nothing. 10 minutes into the drive, Vance's phone rang. Talk to me, he said, listened. Are they following? More listening. Keep me updated. He hung up and turned to Crane. The decoy worked. 2 vehicles peeled off to follow the ambulance, not the SUVs, different cars. Kincaid's team is leading them on a chase toward Fort Bragg. What about Reese? Still parked 2 blocks from the hospital. Either he didn't take the bait or he's waiting for something else. Maya didn't like either option. They drove in tense silence for another 15 minutes, putting distance between themselves and Clearwater. The sun had set fully now, darkness settling over North Carolina like a blanket. Streetlights created pools of yellow illumination that the Explorer passed through like a ghost. Brennan's monitors beeped steadily. Maya kept her hand near the medication kit, ready for anything. They were 27 minutes from Fort Bragg when Crane's phone rang. She answered on speaker. Agent Crane? This is Kincaid. The chase went bad. One of the pursuit vehicles tried to force our ambulance off the road. We returned fire, disabled their engine, but the second vehicle escaped. Casualties? 2 suspects in custody, one with a gunshot wound to the shoulder. They're not talking. What about the ambulance team? Everyone's fine. But Agent Crane, the suspects were carrying military-grade weapons, not contractor equipment. These were active duty specs. Vance's expression went dark. Someone with access to military arsenals is funding this. Maya's mind flashed back to Reese standing in the parking lot, that knowing smile. He said I should ask about the truth regarding Brennan. What if this isn't about killing him? What if it's about extracting him? Extracting him for what? Information. Brennan's DIA. He knows things that people would kill for, or kidnap for. Crane accelerated, the Explorer's engine growling. We need to get him to Fort Bragg now. But fate had other plans. The road ahead suddenly lit up with headlights. 3 vehicles pulling out from side streets, boxing them in. Not police cars. Not civilian vehicles. Black SUVs. Crane hit the brakes, the Explorer's tires screaming. She threw it into reverse, but more lights appeared behind them. They were surrounded. Contact front and rear, Vance said, voice steady despite the situation. He pulled a weapon from his jacket, a compact Sig Sauer that said he'd been ready for this. Crane, can you break through? Not without risking the patient. The SUVs stopped, creating a perimeter. Doors opened and men stepped out. 8 of them, all armed, all wearing tactical gear. Victor Reese was among them. He approached the Explorer with his hands visible but his posture relaxed, like this was a business meeting instead of an armed standoff. Colonel Vance, he called, I'm going to need you to step out of the vehicle. Vance lowered his window an inch. Not happening. Then we have a problem. We've had a problem since you showed up at that hospital with fake credentials and a team of operators. Reese smiled. Those credentials are legitimate. My contract is legitimate. What's not legitimate is you absconding with a federal asset without proper authorization. Asset? Maya said, loud enough to be heard. He's a patient. He's also in possession of classified information that needs to be secured. Information he was transporting when he had his convenient accident. The pieces clicked together with horrifying clarity. This wasn't an accident, Maya said. You caused it. Reese's expression didn't change. I caused it to look like an accident. There's a difference. Vance's weapon came up, aiming through the window. You just admitted to attempted murder of a federal official. I admitted to securing an asset that had become a liability. And before you pull that trigger, Colonel, you should know that 3 of my men have sniper rifles trained on this vehicle. You fire, they fire, and everyone inside becomes a casualty. Maya checked Brennan's monitors. His vitals were spiking. Stress response to the stopped vehicle, the raised voices. She adjusted his medication, trying to keep him stable. What do you want? Crane asked. I want Robert Brennan, the encrypted drive he was carrying, and everyone in this vehicle to forget this conversation ever happened. And if we refuse, then I take all 3 by force, and you end up in body bags. The standoff held for 10 seconds that felt like 10 hours. Then Brennan's monitor started alarming. Maya looked down and felt her stomach drop. His blood pressure was plummeting, heart rate accelerating into dangerous territory. The stress was causing a vascular response, exactly what Dr. Webb had warned about. He's crashing, Maya said urgently. Vance, I need to stabilize him now or he dies. Do it, Vance ordered, not taking his eyes off Reese. Maya grabbed the medication kit, hands moving fast. Beta blocker to control the heart rate, fluids to support blood pressure, careful monitoring of the surgical site for any signs of renewed bleeding. Outside, Reese watched with professional detachment. Clock's ticking, Colonel, he said. Make your choice. Give me Brennan alive or watch him die in that vehicle. Maya worked faster, adjusting dosages, monitoring responses. The alarms continued their urgent beeping. Come on, she whispered. Come on, stay with me. Brennan's heart rate started to stabilize, blood pressure climbing slowly, back toward acceptable ranges. The alarms quieted. Maya exhaled, hands shaking slightly from the adrenaline. He's stable, she announced. Vance's jaw was tight. We're not giving him to you. Then you're sentencing everyone in this vehicle to death. Red laser dots appeared on the Explorer's windshield, 3 of them, perfectly aligned with where Vance, Crane, and Maya sat. Last chance, Reese said. Maya looked at Brennan, unconscious and vulnerable. Looked at Crane's white-knuckled grip on the steering wheel. Looked at Vance, who was clearly calculating odds that weren't in their favor. Then she looked at Reese and remembered something from Afghanistan. Something about his operation, about the way he'd moved through command structures. You're not CIA anymore, she said, voice carrying through the window. You went private, but you kept your contacts. Someone inside the agency hired you for this. Reese's expression shifted. Barely, but enough. Who? Maya pressed. Who's so afraid of what Brennan knows that they're willing to kill him? You're asking the wrong questions, Torres. Then what's the right question? Reese leaned closer to the vehicle. The right question is what Brennan discovered that made him run with classified materials instead of going through proper channels. The right question is why he was driving to Clearwater instead of Fort Bragg. The right question is who he was planning to meet. Maya's breath caught. Because Brennan hadn't been going to the hospital. He'd been running from someone. And that someone had caught up. The realization hit Maya like cold water. Brennan hadn't crashed by accident. He'd been fleeing, carrying something dangerous enough that people would kill to retrieve it. And now he was trapped in an Explorer surrounded by armed operators who wanted him, or what he carried, badly enough to stage a military-style extraction on American soil. He was meeting someone, Maya said, the words coming out before she could stop them. Someone who could protect him. Reese's eyes narrowed. Smart, but not smart enough to stay quiet. Vance shifted his weapon slightly, and the laser dots on the windshield tracked with the movement. Torres stopped talking, but Maya's mind was racing ahead, connecting pieces that had seemed random until now. The car accident happened on Route 47, right? That's not the route to Fort Bragg, that's the route to the federal courthouse, Crane finished, understanding dawning in her voice. Brennan was going to turn himself in as a whistleblower. The air inside the Explorer seemed to crystallize. Reese's expression went flat, the kind of empty calm that preceded violence. You're all making this much harder than it needs to be. What did he find? Vance asked, voice steady despite the weapons trained on them. What's on that encrypted drive? Nothing that concerns you? Everything about this concerns me. Brennan is DIA, my agency. If there's corruption, your agency? Reese laughed, short and bitter. Colonel, you have no idea how deep this goes. The people I work for don't answer to DIA command. They don't answer to anyone you could reach with a phone call. Maya checked Brennan's vitals again, still stable, but barely. The medication she'd administered would keep him alive for maybe another hour before his body started rejecting the stress. After that, he'd need a full ICU or he'd code again. We don't have time for this, she said. He needs a hospital. Then give him to me, and I'll make sure he gets one. A hospital or a morgue? Crane's voice was ice. Because that woman you sent to his room wasn't there to check vitals. Reese shrugged. That was a contingency. Plan B, if the extraction failed. You stopped it. Congratulations. Now we're on Plan C. Which is? The one where you run out of options. Vance's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and something shifted in his expression. That was Fort Bragg Command. They've been monitoring this situation through satellite. Every word you've said, every threat you've made, it's all being recorded. For the first time, Reese looked uncertain. You're not just dealing with local PD anymore, Vance continued. You're not even dealing with FBI. This is now a Department of Defense issue, which means the full weight of military intelligence is about to come down on your head. Satellite surveillance requires authorization, which I obtained the moment you admitted to causing Brennan's accident. Vance's smile was sharp. You played your hand too early, Reese. Now everyone knows you're not here to protect an asset. You're here to clean up evidence. The standoff shifted. Reese's team exchanged glances, quick professional assessments of changed circumstances. The laser dots wavered slightly, and Maya realized the snipers were recalculating their positions. Then headlights appeared in the distance. Not just one vehicle, but many. Military convoy, Humvees with mounted weapons, troop carriers, command vehicles. The full response package that happened when DOD decided something was a credible threat to national security. Reese saw them coming and his jaw tightened. This isn't over. Yes, Vance said quietly. It is. The convoy arrived in under 90 seconds, surrounding the entire area with overwhelming force. Soldiers in full tactical gear deployed with precision that made Reese's team look like amateurs. Weapons trained, positions secured, escape routes cut off. A colonel in Army combat uniform stepped out of the lead Humvee, flanked by 2 MPs. Victor Reese, he announced, voice carrying across the road. You and your team are under military detention pending investigation into interference with federal operations. Drop your weapons and place your hands on your heads. Reese didn't move for a long moment. Maya could see the calculations running behind his eyes. Assess the situation, count the odds, determine if resistance was viable. It wasn't. One by one, his team complied. Weapons lowered, hands raised, 8 operators who'd been ready to kill federal agents now surrendering without a fight, because the math had changed. MPs moved in, securing each person with zip ties and searching them for additional weapons. They found plenty. Sidearms, knives, one operative carrying a collapsible rifle in a backpack. Reese was the last to be restrained. He looked at Maya as the MPS zip-tied his wrists. You should have stayed out of this. I tried, Maya said, but someone kept getting in my way. The Army colonel approached the Explorer, and Vance lowered his window fully this time. Colonel Vance? I'm Colonel Sarah Hendricks, Fort Bragg Command. We've been monitoring this situation. Is the asset secure? Stable but critical. We need immediate transport to your medical facility. Already arranged. Medevac chopper inbound. ETA 4 minutes. True to her word, the sound of rotor blades began echoing through the night. A Blackhawk appeared over the tree line, spotlight sweeping the road before touching down in a clear section 50 meters away. A full medical team jumped out. Army flight medics with equipment that made the Explorer's kit look like a first aid box. They worked with Maya to transfer Brennan to a specialized stretcher, securing him for flight with straps and monitors that would track every vital sign. You did good work keeping him alive, one of the medics said to Maya as they worked. Most people would have lost him after that first crash. Most people didn't train at Walter Reed. The medic grinned. Army? 6 years. Combat medic. Hooah! They loaded Brennan into the Blackhawk, the medical team moving with practiced efficiency. Maya started to step back, but Colonel Hendricks caught her arm. You're coming too, she said. We'll need your knowledge of his surgical complications during transport. Maya climbed aboard, strapping into a jump seat beside the stretcher. The engines roared, and the Black Hawk lifted off smoothly, leaving the road and the captured operatives behind. Through the window, Maya saw Reese being loaded into a military transport vehicle. He looked up once, eyes finding the helicopter, and even from this distance, Maya could read his expression. This wasn't defeat. This was delay. The flight to Fort Bragg took 11 minutes. The hospital there was a different world from Riverside Memorial. Military precision, state-of-the-art equipment, staff who treated trauma cases with the calm efficiency of people who'd seen worse. They had Brennan in an operating room within 3 minutes of landing, a full surgical team ready to address any complications from the transport. Maya provided the handoff briefing, every detail of the initial surgery, the complications that had followed, the medications administered, the crash and recovery in the Explorer. The lead surgeon, a major with graying temples and steady hands, listened without interrupting. When Maya finished, he nodded. "We'll take it from here. Good work, nurse." "Torres," she corrected automatically. "Torres." He smiled slightly. "I've heard about you. Kandahar, right? The field hospital that got overrun?" Maya stiffened. "That's classified. So is everything that happened tonight. Welcome to the club." He turned to his team. "Let's get started." Maya stepped out of the OR and found herself in a hallway that looked like every military hospital she'd ever worked in. Sterile, efficient, designed for function over comfort. Vance and Crane were waiting, along with Colonel Hendricks and two people Maya didn't recognize. "Ms. Torres," Hendricks said formally, "these are Special Agents Martinez and Kim from the Defense Criminal Investigative Service. They need to ask you some questions." The next 2 hours were an interrogation disguised as a debrief. They went through everything: the initial arrest by Harlow, the emergency surgery, the assassination attempt, the standoff with Reese. Maya answered every question with clinical precision, leaving nothing out, adding no speculation. Agent Martinez, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and sharper questions, pressed hardest on Maya's history with Reese. "You worked with him in Afghanistan. On what operation?" "That's classified above my clearance level." "Your clearance is secret. I'm asking what you personally witnessed." Maya chose her words carefully. "I provided medical support for a Special Activities Division operation in Kandahar province. Reese was the team leader. I treated casualties and maintained operational security. That's all I can discuss." "Did you ever witness Reese engage in activities that seemed outside normal operational parameters?" That was a loaded question. Maya thought back to Kandahar, to the night the compound got hit, to the decisions Reese had made that saved lives but violated protocol, to the classified reports she'd filed that disappeared into black budget bureaucracy. "Define normal operational parameters," she said. Martinez leaned forward. "Did you ever see him kill someone who wasn't an immediate threat? Torture detainees for information? Execute prisoners?" "No." "Did you ever suspect he was capable of those things?" Maya met her eyes. "I suspected everyone was capable of those things. It was a war zone. People did what they had to do to survive." "That's not an answer." "It's the only answer I have." The interrogation continued, circling back to the same questions with different phrasing, looking for inconsistencies that didn't exist. Finally, Agent Kim called for a break. Maya stepped outside into cool night air and found Crane waiting on a bench near the hospital entrance. "They're thorough," Crane said as Maya sat down. "They're fishing. Can you blame them? A DIA deputy director gets run off the road, nearly assassinated in a hospital, and extracted by a team of former CIA operators. Someone high up wants answers." "What about Harlow?" Crane's expression hardened. "Still in custody at Clearwater PD, but not for long. FBI's filing federal charges tomorrow morning: unlawful detention, obstruction of federal duties, reckless endangerment. He's looking at 5 to 10 years minimum." Maya should have felt satisfaction. Instead, she just felt tired. He was doing his job. He was being a bully with a badge. There's a difference. Crane pulled out her phone, scrolled through messages. "The woman we caught in Brennan's room. She's talking. Not much, but enough. She's Russian intelligence, GRU. Says she was hired through cutouts to eliminate a target. Didn't know who or why." "You believe her?" I believe she's saying exactly what her handlers told her to say if she got caught, which means this is bigger than a simple hit job. Maya watched ambulances coming and going from the emergency entrance. What did Brennan find that's worth all this? We won't know until he wakes up, if he wakes up. He'll wake up. Maya said it with more confidence than she felt. Her phone buzzed, a number she didn't recognize. She answered cautiously. Torres. Ms. Torres, this is Dr. Webb at Riverside Memorial. I wanted to update you on Mr. Brennan's condition before he was transferred. We found something during the initial surgery that I didn't include in the official report. Maya's pulse quickened. What kind of something? A small data chip surgically implanted under his skin near the liver. We discovered it when we were repairing the laceration. It's not medical, it's military-grade encrypted storage. Did you remove it? No. It was embedded in scar tissue, and removing it would have extended the surgery by an hour. Given his critical condition, I made the call to leave it. Webb paused. Ms. Torres, someone went to a lot of trouble to hide that chip, and someone else went to a lot of trouble to get to Mr. Brennan. I think those someones are the same people. Does anyone else know about this? Just you and me. I didn't put it in the report because I've been doing this long enough to know when something's above my clearance level. Smart. Don't tell anyone else. I'll handle it. She hung up and immediately dialed Vance. He answered on the second ring. Torres, what do you have? She told him about the chip, watching his expression change from concerned to furious. Brennan's carrying classified data inside his body, he said slowly. That's not whistleblower protocol. That's espionage tradecraft. Or protection. If he was running from his own agency, hiding the data surgically, makes sense. Well, Vance started walking, phone still to his ear, heading back into the hospital. We need that chip, now. They assembled a team fast. Vance, Crane, Martinez, Kim, and Colonel Hendricks. The surgeon who'd taken over Brennan's care was briefed on the situation and agreed to retrieve the chip during a scheduled procedure to check his surgical repairs. The operation took 47 minutes. When the surgeon emerged, he was holding a small plastic bag containing something that looked like a grain of rice. Embedded in scar tissue, just like Dr. Webb said, took some delicate work to extract without damaging it. Martinez took the bag carefully. We'll need to analyze this in a secure facility. There's a SCIF 2 floors down, Hendricks said. Sensitive compartmented information facility. Everything we need to decrypt and analyze military-grade storage. They moved to the SCIF, a windowless room with electronic countermeasures and equipment that could crack encryption designed to withstand foreign intelligence services. A tech specialist in civilian clothes was already waiting, fingers flying across multiple keyboards. How long? Vance asked. Depends on the encryption level. Could be minutes, could be days. It took 6 hours. Maya stayed the entire time, running on coffee and adrenaline. Crane left twice to coordinate with FBI headquarters. Vance made dozens of phone calls to people whose names were never spoken aloud. Dawn was breaking over Fort Bragg when the tech specialist finally leaned back in his chair. Got it, he said. The screen filled with files, hundreds of them, organized by date and classification level. Documents, audio recordings, emails, financial records. Evidence. Martinez started reading, her expression growing darker with each file. This is internal DIA communications, classified operations, black budget allocations. She clicked deeper. Financial transfers to offshore accounts, weapons shipments to unauthorized recipients, interrogation reports that violate Geneva Conventions. How high does it go? Vance asked quietly. Martinez opened another file. All the way to the deputy director level, multiple officials, including... She stopped, face going pale. Including who? Vance pressed. Including your direct superior, Colonel. Director of Operations, Patricia Caldwell. The room went silent. Vance stared at the screen like it had personally betrayed him. Patricia Caldwell authorized illegal operations? According to these files, she didn't just authorize them, she profited from them. There are bank records showing transfers of over $40 million to accounts in the Caymans. Martinez scrolled further. And communications with Victor Reese going back 3 years. She hired him for off-book operations in Syria, Yemen, and Ukraine. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Brennan had discovered the corruption and decided to run instead of going through official channels, because official channels were controlled by the same people he was trying to expose. Caldwell had sent Reese to stop him, to recover the evidence, to eliminate the threat, and when that failed, she'd escalated. The assassination attempt, Crane said. Caldwell ordered it. She's cleaning house, Vance agreed. Brennan's just the first target. Anyone who knows about this is in danger. Martinez was already on her phone. I'm calling the Director of National Intelligence. This goes beyond DIA, Internal Affairs. While she made the call, Maya reviewed the medical files in the data dump. Interrogation reports, injury assessments, psychological evaluations of detainees subjected to techniques that were explicitly illegal under federal law. One name kept appearing in the medical reports, Dr. Elena Volkov, the Russian operative they'd caught in Brennan's hospital room. She wasn't just an assassin, Maya said, pulling up one of the files. She was a physician. Caldwell hired her to conduct interrogations for the Black Ops program. Vance looked over her shoulder. Medical torture, of course. And when Brennan found out, Caldwell sent her to silence him. Someone she trusted to get close to a patient without raising suspicion. The irony was brutal. A doctor sent to kill someone being protected by another doctor. Martinez finished her call. DNI is mobilizing a task force. They want Caldwell in custody within the hour. She'll run, Crane said. The moment she finds out Reese is captured, she'll disappear. Then we don't give her the chance. Vance pulled out his phone. I'm calling her directly. Standard check-in, nothing suspicious. I need to keep her occupied until federal marshals arrive. He dialed, put it on speaker. The phone rang 4 times before a woman answered. Her voice was crisp, professional, exactly what you'd expect from a senior intelligence official. Vance, what's your status? Brennan is secure at Fort Bragg, ma'am. Stable condition, under guard. Good. And the contractor team that interfered? In military custody. We're processing them now. A pause. All of them? Yes, ma'am, including the team leader. Another pause. Longer this time. Vance caught Maya's eye. Caldwell was thinking, recalculating. I'll need a full briefing, Caldwell said finally. Secure line, 1 hour. Understood. Ma'am, there's one more thing. The medical team found something during Brennan's surgery. A data storage device. The silence that followed was absolute. Recovered? Caldwell asked, and her voice had changed, sharper, colder. Yes, ma'am. We're analyzing it now. Don't. The word was a command. That's classified beyond your clearance, Colonel. Secure the device and await my arrival. When should I expect you? I'm wheels up in 20 minutes. Fort Bragg by 0900. She hung up. Vance looked at Martinez. You got that? Every word, recorded and transmitted to the task force. Martinez smiled grimly. She just confessed to knowledge of the classified data without asking what it contained. That's consciousness of guilt. She's coming here, Crane said, walking right into custody. Or she's coming to destroy the evidence, Maya countered. Caldwell doesn't strike me as someone who gives up easily. Vance checked his watch. We have 90 minutes to prepare. Hendricks, I need this hospital locked down. Nobody in or out without federal authorization. Martinez, coordinate with the task force. I want Caldwell arrested the moment she steps off that aircraft. Plans were made, positions secured, contingencies prepared. Maya found herself assigned to remain with Brennan in post-op, both as medical oversight and as a witness who could testify to everything that had happened. She sat in a chair beside his bed, watching monitors and thinking about the chain of events that had brought her here. 24 hours ago, she'd been a nurse doing her job. Now she was at the center of a federal corruption investigation that reached the highest levels of military intelligence. Brennan's eyes opened, just a flutter at first, then more sustained. His gaze found Maya, confused and disoriented. Where? His voice was barely a whisper. Fort Bragg, Maya said softly. You're safe. Don't try to move. The data, we have it. We know what you found. Brennan's eyes filled with something that might have been relief or might have been terror. Caldwell. On her way here, but she's walking into a trap. Federal agents are waiting. She won't come alone. The words sent ice through Maya's veins. What do you mean? Caldwell doesn't take risks. If she knows the data's been recovered, she'll bring insurance. Brennan tried to sit up, winced, fell back. You need to evacuate now. We're secured. Full military lockdown. Doesn't matter. She has people everywhere, people you can't see coming. Maya stood up, moving to the door. 2 MPs stood guard outside, weapons ready. Alert Colonel Vance. Tell him Brennan says Caldwell won't be alone. One of the MPs spoke into his radio, relaying the message. Vance's response came back 30 seconds later. Tell Brennan we're ready for anything. But they weren't. At 0847, 3 supply trucks arrived at Fort Bragg's main gate, carrying medical equipment for the hospital. Their credentials checked out, their manifests were in order, their drivers had proper military ID, they were waved through. At 0851, those trucks parked in the hospital's loading bay, and 17 operatives in stolen Army uniforms stepped out, carrying weapons hidden in equipment cases. By the time anyone realized what was happening, they'd already taken control of the first floor. The hospital lockdown alarm started blaring at 0853. Maya heard it and felt her training kick in. Lockdown meant hostile actors inside the facility. The MPs outside Brennan's room immediately moved into defensive positions, weapons trained on the hallway. What's happening? Maya asked. Breach on the first floor, one of them said, listening to his radio. Multiple hostiles armed, moving toward the upper levels. Caldwell hadn't come alone. She'd sent an assault team, and they were coming for Brennan. Maya's hands moved on instinct, disconnecting Brennan's non-essential monitors and preparing him for emergency transport. The MPs held position at the door, weapons raised, eyes scanning the corridor that had suddenly become a combat zone. How many floors? Maya asked, voice steady despite her racing pulse. We're on 4. They breached on 1. The lead MP, his nameplate read Kowalski, adjusted his grip on his rifle. 3 floors between us and them. That won't last long. Gunfire erupted somewhere below, sharp cracks echoing through the stairwell. Someone was fighting back, but the assault team had surprise in numbers. Maya's phone buzzed. Vance. Torres, what's your status? Post-op ward, 4th floor. Brennan's awake, but not mobile. Stay there. We're sending reinforcements. They won't arrive in time. Silence. Then Vance's voice came back harder. Then hold that position. Do not let them reach Brennan. The line went dead. Maya looked at the 2 MPs, then at Brennan struggling to sit up despite his pain. We need to move him. Ma'am, our orders. Your orders just changed. If they reach this room, we're all dead. She started wheeling Brennan's bed toward the door. There's a service elevator at the end of this hall. It goes down to the basement level, connects to the tunnel system that links the hospital to other base buildings. Kowalski hesitated for maybe half a second, then nodded. Chen, take point. I'll cover rear. They moved fast, the bed's wheels squeaking against polished floors. Maya kept one hand on Brennan's IV line, the other steadying the portable monitors. Behind them, the stairwell door burst open, and voices shouted in clipped professional tones. Not panicked, not rushed, just operators executing a mission. Contact rear, Kowalski yelled. The second MP, Chen, spun and opened fire down the hallway. 3-round bursts, controlled and precise. Maya didn't look back, just pushed the bed faster. The service elevator was 20 meters ahead. 15. 10. Bullets tore through the hallway, punching holes in walls and shattering ceiling tiles. Chen went down with a grunt, clutching his shoulder. Kowalski dragged him behind a supply cart and returned fire, buying seconds. Maya reached the elevator and slammed the call button. The doors opened immediately. Pure luck. And she shoved Brennan's bed inside. Kowalski, she shouted. He fired one more burst, then grabbed Chen and hauled him toward the elevator. They dove inside just as bullets chewed apart the doorframe behind them. Maya hit the basement button. The doors closed. Silence, except for Chen's labored breathing and the elevator's mechanical hum. How bad? Maya asked, already moving to assess Chen's wound. Through and through, he gasped. Hurts like hell, but I'll live. She used supplies from the crash cart to pack the wound, applying pressure. The elevator descended slowly, too slowly, and Maya counted seconds in her head. The assault team would be right behind them. The elevator stopped at the basement level. Doors opened onto a utilitarian corridor lit by fluorescent strips, Concrete walls marked with directional arrows pointing to different base facilities. "Which way?" Kowalski asked. Maya pointed left. "Tunnel to the command center, 200 meters, secure access." They ran, Kowalski pushing Brennan's bed while Maya supported Chen. The tunnel was narrow, footsteps echoing off concrete. Behind them, the elevator dinged again. "Faster!" Maya urged. They burst through a security door into the command center's lower level and found chaos. Military personnel rushing to defensive positions, computer screens showing security feeds from across the base, radios crackling with status reports. Colonel Hendricks saw them, and her eyes went wide. "Torres, what?" "Assault team breached the hospital. They're right behind us." Hendricks grabbed her radio. "All units, hostile force and basement tunnel system. Lock down every access point to command center, now." Steel doors began sliding shut throughout the facility, emergency protocol designed to turn the command center into a fortress. But one door stayed open, the one Maya's group had just come through. The assault team appeared in the tunnel entrance. 6 operators in stolen army uniforms, weapons up, moving with the kind of tactical precision that said they'd done this before. The lead operative had a radio to his ear, receiving instructions. "Surrender Robert Brennan," he called out, voice amplified in the enclosed space. "Everyone else walks away." Hendricks stepped forward, flanked by armed security personnel. "This is a United States military installation. Drop your weapons and surrender, or you will be fired upon." The operative smiled. "You fire, we fire back. How many casualties are you willing to accept?" Maya saw Hendricks' jaw tighten, the calculation of a commander weighing impossible choices. The command center held dozens of personnel, most of them unarmed support staff. A firefight here would be a massacre. But surrendering Brennan meant everything he'd discovered stayed buried. 10 seconds, the operative said. Then we start shooting." Brennan's voice, weak but clear, cut through the tension. "Give me a phone." Everyone turned to look at him. "I said give me a phone," Brennan repeated, sitting up despite the pain. "I can end this." Maya grabbed her cell and handed it to him. He dialed a number from memory, put it on speaker. It rang twice before a woman answered. "This is Caldwell." "It's Brennan." The silence that followed was electric. "Robert," Caldwell said finally, and her voice carried false warmth. "I'm glad you're alive. We've been so worried." "Cut it, Patricia. I'm at Fort Bragg Command Center, surrounded by federal agents and military personnel. Your assault team is here, and they're about to get slaughtered unless you call them off." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do. The same way you knew about the encrypted data, the same way you sent Reese to kill me, the same way you ordered that Russian operative to finish the job." Brennan's voice strengthened with each word. "It's over. The data's been decrypted. Every illegal operation, every offshore account, every black site interrogation. It's all documented. Those are classified operations authorized at the highest. Those are war crimes, and you're going to answer for them." A pause. Then Caldwell's voice came back colder. "You always were naive, Robert. Did you really think exposing this would change anything? The people I work with don't answer to oversight committees. They don't get hauled before Congress. They disappear problems like you before they become inconvenient." "Not this time." Brennan looked at Colonel Hendricks. "You're recording this?" Hendricks nodded, holding up a device. "Every word." Brennan smiled grimly and spoke into the phone again. "Patricia Caldwell, you're confessing to conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, and violation of federal statutes on live recording in the presence of military command. You just destroyed whatever plausible deniability you had left." The line went dead. For 5 seconds, nobody moved. Then the lead operative's radio crackled. A woman's voice, Caldwell's, came through, distorted by encryption but unmistakable. "Mission aborted. Exfiltrate immediately." The operative lowered his weapon. "You heard her. We're leaving." "Not happening," Hendricks said. "You're in custody pending investigation." "Try to stop us and this gets messy." Security personnel tightened their positions, weapons trained. The standoff held for 3 heartbeats. Then gunfire erupted from the tunnel entrance, not from the assault team, but from behind them. Federal agents in tactical gear poured through, cutting off the escape route. Agent Martinez led the charge, FBI jacket over body armor, weapon up. Drop your weapons. You're surrounded. The assault team realized their situation had collapsed. One by one, they lowered their rifles and raised their hands. MPs moved in, securing each operative with zip ties and searching them for hidden weapons. Martinez approached Hendricks. Director of National Intelligence sent us. We've been tracking Caldwell's communications for the past hour. The moment she gave that abort order, we had confirmation of her involvement. Where is she now? Vance asked, appearing from a side entrance with Crane. En route to Fort Bragg, like she planned. Except now she's flying into a federal trap. Martinez smiled without humor. Her aircraft should be landing in approximately 6 minutes. They moved to the command center's operations room, where multiple screens showed security feeds from across the base. One camera angle focused on the airfield, where a civilian Gulfstream jet was on final approach. Maya watched the aircraft land smoothly, taxi to a designated area, and stop. The door opened, stairs deployed. Patricia Caldwell stepped out. She looked exactly like her official DIA photographs. Late 50s, silver hair and a professional cut, wearing a dark suit that projected authority. She carried a briefcase and moved with the confidence of someone who believed herself untouchable. Federal marshals were waiting at the bottom of the stairs. Through the security feed's audio, Maya heard the lead marshal's voice. Patricia Caldwell, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, violation of the Espionage Act, and crimes against federal officials. You have the right to remain silent. Caldwell's expression didn't change. I'm invoking diplomatic immunity. You're not a diplomat. You're a civil servant, and you just confessed to multiple felonies on a recorded line. The marshal gestured to his team. Hands behind your back. For the first time, something cracked in Caldwell's composure. Her eyes swept across the airfield, looking for allies, for backup, for any way out. There was none. The marshals cuffed her, and she was led to a waiting vehicle with federal plates. The Gulfstream's pilot was also detained, along with 2 security personnel who'd accompanied Caldwell. The command center erupted in controlled relief. Not celebration, because the situation was still too serious, but the tension that had been coiling for hours finally released. Vance turned to Brennan. How long have you known? 8 months. I was conducting routine oversight of black budget operations and noticed irregularities in the financial reporting. Started investigating, discovered the offshore accounts, the unauthorized operations, the violations. Brennan's voice was tired. I tried going through proper channels, filed reports with the Inspector General, requested audits, escalated to senior leadership. And they buried it, Maya said. Worse. They threatened me, transferred me to dead-end assignments, revoked my access to sensitive files, made it clear that continuing would be career suicide. Brennan met Vance's eyes. So I started gathering evidence quietly. Copied files, recorded conversations, built a case that couldn't be ignored. And had it surgically implanted in your body, Crane added. Only way to keep it safe. Caldwell had access to everything. My office, my home, my vehicle. She would have found a flash drive or external storage. But medical implants? Nobody thinks to check for those. Martinez was already coordinating with her team, issuing orders through her radio. We're going to need full debriefs from everyone involved. Torres, that includes you. Maya nodded, exhaustion starting to settle in now that the immediate danger had passed. She checked Chen's wound again. The packing was holding, but he needed proper medical attention. Get him to the ER, she told the medics who'd arrived. Gunshot wound through and through, possible arterial involvement. They loaded Chen onto a stretcher and rushed him away. Kowalski followed, limping slightly from an injury Maya hadn't even noticed during the chaos. Brennan caught her arm as she started to leave. You saved my life. Multiple times. I did my job. No, you did more than that. His grip tightened slightly. Most people would have walked away when that cop arrested you. Would have let the system handle it, protected themselves. You didn't. Maya thought about Harlow, about the handcuffs, about being treated like a criminal for trying to save a life. Someone told me once that doing the right thing isn't always easy, but it's always worth it. Who told you that? A soldier I treated in Kandahar. He died 3 hours later, but those words stayed with me. Brennan released her arm, settling back against his pillows. Thank you, Maya Torres. The next 72 hours were a blur of depositions, interviews, and media coverage that turned Maya's life inside out. The story broke on national news first. Federal corruption investigation, DIA official arrested, military assault on Fort Bragg. Details were scarce initially, classified for national security, but enough leaked to create a firestorm. Then someone released the body cam footage of Maya's arrest. It went viral within hours. Maya being handcuffed in the hospital parking lot, calmly explaining that someone would die, Harlow laughing at her Pentagon contact number. The juxtaposition of her composure against his aggression, her professionalism against his ego. Public opinion turned instantly. Hashtags trended. Think pieces were written. Legal experts weighed in on excessive force and unlawful detention. Within 48 hours, Derek Harlow had become the face of everything wrong with policing in America. Maya watched it all from Fort Bragg's visitor quarters, where she'd been asked to remain pending completion of the investigation. Her phone buzzed constantly with interview requests, job offers, speaking invitations. She ignored them all. On the third day, Vance knocked on her door. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "I've been better. The media attention will die down eventually. That's what I'm afraid of." Maya gestured to her phone. "Right now, people care. They're angry about what happened, demanding accountability. But in 2 weeks, there will be another story, another outrage. And Derek Harlow will just be a footnote." Vance sat down across from her. "Maybe. Or maybe this is the one that actually changes things." "You believe that?" "I believe you gave people something they rarely see, proof that the system can still work when someone's brave enough to make it work." He pulled out an envelope. "This is from the Director of National Intelligence. She wanted you to have it personally." Maya opened the envelope and found a letter on official letterhead. She read it twice, not quite believing the words. "They're offering me a position," she said slowly. "Federal Oversight Board for Military Medical Operations. They need people who understand both medicine and operational security, people who can't be intimidated or bought off." Vance smiled slightly. "You've proven you're both. I'm a nurse, not a bureaucrat. You're a soldier who became a nurse. That's exactly what they need, someone who knows what happens in the field, who's seen the consequences of bad decisions, who won't let protocol override humanity." Maya set the letter down. "I need to think about it." "Take your time. The offer stands indefinitely." After Vance left, Maya walked to the hospital where Brennan was recovering. His condition had improved dramatically, no longer critical, just healing. He was sitting up when she arrived, reviewing documents on a tablet. "They're letting you work already?" Maya asked. "I'm cooperating with the investigation. Turns out 8 months of evidence is a lot to sort through." He set the tablet aside. "How are you?" "Still processing." "The job offer?" Word traveled fast in federal circles. "You heard about that. I recommended you for it. Told them you were the kind of person who'd walk through fire to do the right thing, and we needed more of those in oversight positions." Brennan studied her. "You're hesitating." "I became a nurse to help people directly, hands-on, immediate impact. A desk job in Washington feels like the opposite of that. You helped me. You helped expose corruption that was getting people killed in black sites across 3 continents. That's pretty direct impact." Maya sat down in the visitor chair. "What happens now?" "To Caldwell. To the operations she authorized?" "Caldwell's facing federal prosecution on 43 counts. Her trial will be classified, but the conviction won't be. As for the operations, they're being shut down, investigated, unwound. The people who were tortured will receive compensation. The officials who enabled it will face consequences." Brennan's expression hardened. "It won't undo the damage, but it's something." "And Reese?" "Cooperating fully in exchange for reduced charges. Turns out loyalty only goes so far when you're facing 20 years in federal prison." A nurse arrived to check Brennan's vitals, and Maya stepped out to give them privacy. In the hallway, she found Agent Crane waiting. "Walk with me?" Crane asked. They walked through the hospital's corridors, past the same rooms where Maya had stabilized Brennan days earlier. "Derek Harlow took a plea deal this morning," Crane said. "Plead guilty to federal charges, agreed to testify against Clearwater PD's training procedures. He's looking at 3 years in federal prison, loss of his pension, permanent ban from law enforcement." Maya felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication, just a hollow awareness that one man's career ending didn't fix the system that created him. What about Officer Stevens? She asked. He was there too. Still employed, still on patrol. He didn't actively participate in your arrest, so there's no grounds for federal charges. He didn't stop it either. No, he didn't. Crane's voice was quiet. That's the harder problem to solve. The ones who stand by and do nothing. They reached a window overlooking the base's main grounds. Soldiers were conducting drills, vehicles were moving between buildings, the machinery of military life continuing as it always had. You know what the worst part is? Maya said. Harlow genuinely believed he was right. Believed I was being insubordinate, that enforcing his authority mattered more than saving a life. That's not evil, that's just broken, Crane finished. A system that rewards control over compassion, punishment over protection. She turned to face Maya. But you broke it. You exposed it. And now people are paying attention. For how long? As long as people like you keep refusing to accept it as normal. Maya's phone buzzed. A text from Doctor. Reeves at Riverside Memorial. Board of Directors wants to meet with you. Discussing creation of new patient advocacy position. Interested? Maya showed the message to Crane, who smiled. Looks like you've got options. Too many options. That's not a bad problem to have. The meeting with Riverside Memorial's Board of Directors happened 2 days later, after Maya was cleared to leave Fort Bragg. She drove back to Clearwater with mixed feelings. This was the city where she'd been arrested, humiliated, dragged through a parking lot in handcuffs. But it was also where she'd saved a life despite impossible odds. The hospital looked different now. Camera crews were stationed outside, reporters doing stand-ups about the nurse who'd exposed federal corruption. Security had been increased, protocols changed, awareness heightened. Doctor. Reeves met Maya at a side entrance, avoiding the media circus. They're relentless, Reeves said, leading Maya through employee corridors. Been here since the story broke. Everyone wants an interview with the nurse who took down a corrupt intelligence official. I didn't take down anyone. I just tried to save a patient. Which is exactly why the board wants to talk to you. Reeves stopped outside a conference room. They're proposing a new position, Director of Patient Advocacy and Medical Rights, someone who can intervene when external pressures threaten patient care, who has the authority to override non-medical interference. Because of what happened with Harlow. Because of what you did when it happened. Most nurses would have complied, avoided confrontation, protected their jobs. You didn't. Maya thought about standing in that hallway, facing down an armed police officer, knowing that every second of delay could cost a life. I didn't think about it. I just reacted. That's instinct. That's training. That's exactly what we need in someone who's supposed to protect patients when things go wrong. Reeves opened the conference room door. They're ready for you. The board meeting lasted an hour. They asked about her experience, her philosophy on patient care, her vision for how such a position would function. Maya answered honestly, not trying to impress, just explaining how she saw the role. Patients trust us with their lives, she said near the end. That trust is sacred. The moment we let external pressures, police interference, insurance complications, bureaucratic delays, override medical judgment, we've broken that trust. Someone needs to be the last line of defense. The board chair, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes, smiled. That someone is you if you want it. They offered her the position on the spot. Higher salary, more authority, a mandate to create protocols that would prevent another Derek Harlow from ever delaying critical care. Maya accepted. The news conference was scheduled for the following afternoon at Riverside Memorial's main entrance, the same spot where she'd been arrested 5 days earlier. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Maya stood at a podium flanked by hospital administrators, Dr. Reeves, and Agent Martinez, who'd come to represent the federal investigation. Camera flashes popped constantly, reporters shouting questions. Ms. Torres, how does it feel to go from being arrested to being celebrated? Were you afraid when Officer Harlow detained you? What message do you have for other healthcare workers facing similar situations? Maya waited for the questions to die down, then spoke into the microphone. 5 days ago, I was arrested in this parking lot for doing my job, for insisting that saving a life mattered more than following orders that made no sense. I was handcuffed, detained, and treated like a criminal while a patient was dying. The crowd went silent. But I wasn't the only victim that day. Robert Brennan nearly died because one officer chose his ego over someone's life. The nurses who watched it happen were afraid to intervene. The system that should have protected us failed. She paused, gathering her thoughts. What happened to me happens to healthcare workers across this country every day. Police interfere with emergency care. Insurance companies delay critical procedures. Bureaucrats prioritize paperwork over patients. And most of the time, we comply because we're afraid of losing our jobs, our licenses, our careers. Maya looked directly into the nearest camera. I'm here to say that fear ends now. Not just for me, but for every nurse, every doctor, every paramedic who's ever been told to wait when a patient needs immediate care. We took an oath to do no harm, to prioritize life above all else. That oath doesn't have exceptions for convenience or protocol. What about Officer Harlow? Someone shouted. Officer Harlow made choices. He's facing consequences for those choices. That's how justice works. Maya's voice softened slightly. But this isn't about one bad officer. This is about a culture that teaches people in authority that control matters more than compassion, that being right matters more than doing right. Do you forgive him? The question hung in the air. Maya thought about Harlow's face when he realized what he'd done, the color draining as federal agents explained the magnitude of his mistake. Forgiveness is personal. Accountability is public. He'll have time to think about his choices. I hope he learns from them. What's next for you? I've accepted a position as Riverside Memorial's Director of Patient Advocacy. My job will be to ensure that what happened to me and to Robert Brennan never happens again, to create protocols that protect patients when external pressures threaten their care, to be the voice that says no when someone tries to interfere with medical treatment. More questions came, but Maya stepped away from the podium. She'd said what needed to be said. As she walked back into the hospital, past the spot where Harlow had cuffed her, Maya felt something shift inside. Not closure. The investigation was ongoing, the trials would take months, the systemic problems would persist, but purpose. She'd been a soldier, a combat medic, a surgical nurse. Now she was something else, an advocate, a protector, a last line of defense for people who couldn't defend themselves. Her phone buzzed. A message from Brennan, who was still at Fort Bragg recovering. Saw the news conference. You were perfect. The offer from DNI still stands if you change your mind. Maya typed back, I'm where I need to be, but thank you. She put the phone away and headed to the surgical floor. There were patients to check on, protocols to review, work to be done. 3 weeks later, Maya stood in a federal courtroom in Washington, D.C. as a witness in Patricia Caldwell's preliminary hearing. The courtroom was closed to the public, classified for national security, but the transcript would eventually be unsealed. Caldwell sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, her silver hair still perfectly styled despite incarceration. She looked at Maya once, expression unreadable, then looked away. The prosecutor called Maya to the stand. Ms. Torres, please describe the events of March 21st, beginning with your encounter with Officer Derek Harlow. Maya did. Every detail, every moment, every decision. The prosecutor asked follow-up questions, establishing timeline, verifying facts, building the case. Then Caldwell's attorney stood for cross-examination. Ms. Torres, isn't it true that you had no idea who Robert Brennan was when you operated on him? That's correct. You didn't know he was DIA, didn't know he was carrying classified data, didn't know any of the circumstances that led to his accident? No. So, from your perspective, he was just another patient? Yes. The attorney smiled like he'd won a point. Then how can you claim my client's actions endangered him specifically? You would have treated him the same regardless of who he was. Maya met his eyes. That's exactly right. I would have treated him the same regardless of who he was, because every life matters equally in an emergency room. But your client didn't see it that way. She saw Robert Brennan as a threat to be eliminated, evidence to be destroyed. She sent assassins to a hospital. She ordered a military assault on a federal installation. She chose murder over accountability. The attorney's smile faded. Objection, Your Honor. The witness is speculating. I'm stating facts, Maya interrupted. Facts that are documented in recordings, surveillance footage, and testimony from multiple federal agents. The judge sustained the objection, but the damage was done. The jury, specially cleared for classified material, had heard every word. The hearing continued for 3 more hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. Caldwell was bound over for trial on all 43 counts. As Maya left the courthouse, reporters were waiting despite the closed proceedings. "Miss Torres, do you think justice will be served?" Maya stopped on the courthouse steps, looking back at the building where powerful people would finally answer for their crimes. "Justice isn't a single verdict," she said. "It's a process. It's accountability, transparency, and the refusal to let power protect itself from consequences. Today was one step in that process. There will be more." "What about Derek Harlow? He's set to be sentenced next week." "I hope he spends his time in prison thinking about the oath he broke, the trust he violated, and the life he nearly cost. And I hope when he gets out, he finds a way to make amends." "Do you think he will?" Maya thought about the look on Harlow's face during their last encounter. Shame mixed with defiance, regret mixed with pride. "I don't know, but I know I'll keep doing my job regardless of whether he learns from his mistakes." She walked down the courthouse steps and got into a waiting car. Vance was driving, having offered to take her to the airport. "You handled that well," he said as they pulled into traffic. "I just told the truth." The truth delivered with surgical precision is still effective testimony. Vance navigated through Washington's congested streets. "The D&I offer is still open, you know. We could use someone like you. I'm happy where I am." "Even after everything that happened in Clearwater?" "Especially after everything that happened in Clearwater." Maya watched the city pass by through the window, monuments to power, buildings where decisions were made that affected millions. Someone needs to be on the ground, protecting patients, making sure the system works the way it's supposed to. That's more important than any desk job in Washington. Vance nodded, understanding. "You were a good soldier, Torres. You're an even better advocate." The flight back to North Carolina gave Maya time to think about everything that had changed in 3 weeks. She'd gone from an unknown surgical nurse to a national figure, from someone who'd been arrested to someone who'd helped expose federal corruption. But underneath all the attention and accolades, she was still the same person who'd stood in a hospital hallway and refused to let someone die because a cop couldn't handle being challenged. That person, the one who did the right thing even when it was hard, even when it cost her, that was who Maya had always been. The Army had refined it. The war had tested it. But the core of it, the unwillingness to compromise when lives were at stake, that had been there all along. She landed in Charlotte and drove back to Clearwater, arriving at her apartment after midnight. The lights were off, mail piled up by the door, everything exactly as she'd left it before her life turned upside down. Maya made tea, sat on her couch, and finally let herself feel the weight of everything that had happened. She'd been arrested, vindicated, celebrated, and scrutinized. She'd saved a life, exposed corruption, testified in federal court. She'd become a symbol of something larger than herself. Resistance to authority when authority was wrong, advocacy for the powerless, refusal to accept injustice as inevitable. It was exhausting, but it was also necessary. Her first day back at Riverside Memorial was quiet by design. Maya arrived early, before the media could show up, and went straight to her new office. It was small but functional, with a window overlooking the parking lot where she'd been arrested. The irony made her smile. Dr. Reeves knocked on the doorframe. "Settling in?" "Getting there." "There's someone here to see you. Says it's important." Maya followed Reeves to a private consultation room and found Officer Stevens waiting. He stood when she entered, nervous energy radiating off him. "Ms. Torres, thank you for seeing me." Maya sat down across from him. "What do you want, Officer Stevens?" "I wanted to apologize for that day in the parking lot, for not stopping Harlow, for—" He stopped, struggling with words. "I should have called that number on your badge. Should have questioned what he was doing. I didn't, and someone almost died because of it." Maya studied him. He looked genuinely remorseful, but regret without action was meaningless. "What are you going to do differently next time?" "I requested transfer to a different unit, community outreach instead of patrol. I'm also enrolled in de-escalation training, working with a therapist to understand why I froze instead of acting." Stevens met her eyes. "I can't undo what happened, but I can make sure it doesn't happen again." "Good, because the badge you wear is supposed to protect people, not intimidate them." "I know. I'm sorry it took this for me to understand that." Maya stood up, extending her hand. Stevens shook it, and something in his expression said he'd actually heard her. After he left, Maya spent the rest of the day reviewing hospital protocols, identifying weak points, drafting proposals for how patient advocacy should function. It was detailed work, boring to most people, but Maya found it satisfying. This was how you changed systems, not with grand gestures, but with careful attention to where they failed and how to fix them. 2 months passed. Derek Harlow was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison. The judge cited his abuse of authority, his refusal to verify information, and his role in nearly causing the death of a federal official. Harlow stood silent during sentencing, offered no apology, showed no remorse. Some people never learned. Patricia Caldwell's trial was scheduled for the following year, her legal team filing motion after motion to delay proceedings. But the evidence against her was overwhelming, and even the most expensive lawyers couldn't change documented facts. Victor Reese provided testimony that sealed several key aspects of the case, confirming Caldwell's direct orders to eliminate Brennan and recover the encrypted data. In exchange, his sentence was reduced to 12 years with possibility of parole after 8. Robert Brennan recovered fully and returned to DYA in a new capacity, Director of Internal Oversight, tasked with implementing reforms to prevent the kind of corruption he'd exposed. His first act was establishing an independent whistleblower protection office with direct access to congressional oversight. Small changes, incremental improvements, but changes nonetheless. Maya's patient advocacy program at Riverside Memorial became a model for hospitals across the region. Other institutions reached out, asking how to implement similar positions, how to protect medical staff from external interference, how to ensure patient care always came first. She trained advocates, wrote protocols, gave presentations at medical conferences. The work was demanding but fulfilling in ways she hadn't expected. One afternoon, Maya was reviewing a case file when her assistant knocked on the door. "There's a call for you, says it's urgent." Maya picked up the phone. "This is Torres." "Maya, it's Marcus Vance." She hadn't spoken to him in weeks. "Colonel, what can I do for you?" "I'm calling to inform you that the military medical oversight position is being restructured. Instead of one board position, they're creating an entire department, 12 positions, covering everything from combat medicine to VA hospital care to whistleblower protection." "That's good news." "They want you to head it." Maya sat back in her chair. "What?" "Director of Medical Advocacy and Oversight, reporting directly to the Secretary of Defense. Full authority to investigate complaints, recommend policy changes, protect medical personnel from retaliation." Vance paused. "It's the job you're already doing, just on a national scale." "I appreciate the offer, but before you say no, hear me out. The work you're doing at Riverside Memorial matters. But imagine doing it for every military hospital, every VA facility, every combat medic in the field. Imagine creating a system where what happened to you could never happen to anyone else in uniform." Maya looked out her window at the parking lot, at the spot where everything had changed. "Can I think about it?" "Take all the time you need, but Maya, we need people who've been through it, who understand what it's like to stand up when standing up has consequences. That's you." After the call ended, Maya sat in silence for a long time. She'd found purpose at Riverside Memorial, found satisfaction in protecting patients and training advocates. Leaving would mean starting over, building something new, taking on challenges she couldn't fully anticipate. But it would also mean extending that protection to thousands of people who needed it, creating systems that would outlast her career, ensuring that the next soldier or veteran or dependent who needed medical care wouldn't face the same obstacles she'd overcome. That night, Maya drove to Fort Bragg to visit Robert Brennan. He was working late in his new office, surrounded by reports and policy proposals. "Torres," he said, surprised. "What brings you here?" "Vance offered me a position, Director of Medical Advocacy for DOD. Brennan smiled. "About time. What did you say?" "I haven't answered yet." "What's holding you back?" Maya sat down across from his desk. "I've spent my whole career helping people one at a time. One patient, one surgery, one emergency. The idea of working at the policy level, affecting thousands of people I'll never meet, it feels abstract." "It's not abstract. It's multiplication." Brennan leaned forward. "You saved my life directly." "That was one person. But the changes you're proposing at Riverside Memorial will save dozens of lives over the next few years." The protocols you develop for DoD could save thousands over the next decade. Same principle, different scale. What if I'm not ready? You were ready the moment you stood up to that cop in the parking lot. Everything since then has just been proving it to everyone else. Maya left Fort Bragg and drove back to Clearwater, thinking about soldiers she'd treated in Afghanistan, patients she'd saved at Walter Reed, the life she'd protected despite impossible odds. Every decision she'd made had been about one thing, doing what was right even when it was hard. This was just another version of the same choice. The next morning, Maya called Vance. I accept the position. When do I start? 3 weeks later, Maya Torres stood in the Pentagon, taking an oath in front of the Secretary of Defense and a room full of military leaders who'd once thought of nurses as support staff rather than critical personnel. I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office upon which I am about to enter. The words resonated differently this time than they had when she'd first enlisted. Back then, they'd been abstract concepts. Now they were lived experience. Supporting and defending meant protecting the vulnerable. Bearing faith meant refusing to compromise principles. Faithfully discharging duties meant doing the right thing regardless of cost. After the ceremony, as people congratulated her and discussed her new responsibilities, Maya stepped outside onto a terrace overlooking the Potomac River. The sun was setting, casting golden light across the water. She thought about the journey that had brought her here. From a combat medic in Kandahar to a surgical nurse in Clearwater to a federal advocate in Washington. Every step had been marked by moments where she could have walked away, could have chosen safety over principle, compliance over resistance. She'd never chosen the easy path, and she never would. Because somewhere in America right now, a nurse was being told to wait when a patient needed immediate care. A doctor was being pressured to prioritize insurance over treatment. A medic was facing impossible choices with insufficient support. Maya's job was to make sure they didn't face those challenges alone. Her phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Reeves. The advocacy program just prevented a police interference case. Officer tried to delay a trauma patient for questioning. New protocols worked perfectly. Thank you for teaching us how to fight back. Maya smiled and typed back. You don't need to thank me. You're doing the work. Keep going. She put the phone away and looked out at the city where decisions were made that affected millions of lives. Tomorrow she'd start changing those decisions. Tonight she'd remember everyone who'd gotten her here. The soldiers who'd died in her arms, the patients who'd survived because she refused to quit, the colleagues who'd stood beside her when standing was dangerous. Derek Harlow had tried to make her small, tried to reduce her to someone who followed orders without question. He'd failed. Because Maya Torres had never been small, had never been someone who could be intimidated into silence. She was a soldier, a healer, an advocate, and she was just getting started.